I think it is time to go. But I think it is time to go to the main event, which is the New York City Mayoral general election debate, which should be pretty entertaining. I've heard that Curtis Sliwa said some very interesting things here, but honestly, just seeing him on stage alongside Zohran Mamdani and I believe, who is it? Andrew Cuomo should be very entertaining. So without further ado, here we go. This is the New York City mayoral general election debate.
Government Affairs reporter Melissa Russo, senior politics editor at Politico Sally Goldenberg, and Telemundo 47 anchor Rosarena Breton. This is a 2-hour debate live on all NBC New York and Telemundo 47 streaming and digital platforms, Politico.com, Telexitos, and YouTube. The first hour is also live on Channel 4 and Telemundo 47. We do have a few rules for the candidates. For traditional question and answer, you'll have 1 minute to respond, and we'll offer 30-second rebuttals at the moderator's discretion. We'll also be asking questions where we will be looking for shorter answers. We also reserve the right to cut off your microphone if you ignore the rules, but candidates, you know we don't want to do that. The goal is for you to hear each other and for New Yorkers to hear everything you have to say. Good luck. We'll begin with Melissa Russo.
Thank you, David, and good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for being here. We begin tonight by asking you to do what every mayor dreams of, and that is to write your own headlines. Imagine it's January 2027, and you have been in office for exactly 1 year. We would like you to quickly give us one headline about what you think your biggest accomplishment will have been in year number one. We'll begin with...
I gotta say, the framing of this question is a little bit silly, although I like it, where it's like, what's the biggest thing you want to accomplish in your first year as mayor? Okay, that's fine. Write your own headline? I don't think I'm the target audience for a question like that. I'll just put it like that.
To you, Mr. Cuomo.
First, thank you very much for sponsoring the debate and having all of us. The one headline, how many characters in the headline?
You know, you're familiar with headline length.
Rent down, comma, crime down, comma, education scores up, comma, more jobs in New York City.
Now we're getting maybe a little over the average headline length, but...
It doesn't sound like he did the debate prep for this question, which I don't blame him. Who would have done debate prep for this question?
Optimism high.
Thank you. Mr. Sliwa.
Curtis Sliwa is without his iconic red beret because I'm talking to the people of New York City about the really serious issues of affordability, the cost of living, and obviously...
Bro, that's a long headline.
What I've spent most of my life doing, which is public safety in the streets and the subways.
We would love a headline from you. What will your headline be, your big headline in year number one as mayor?
Curtis Sliwa exceeds all expectations and looks very mayoral tonight.
Mr. Mamdani, you've had some time to think about it now. What's your headline?
It's a pleasure to be here, first of all, and I really want to thank the moderators and the opportunity to speak directly to New Yorkers about this moment in time and our opportunity to transform the most expensive city in the United States of America. The headline would read, in about a year, Mamdani continues to take on Trump, delivers on affordability agenda for New Yorkers.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani. Sally?
Thank you, Melissa. We're going to talk about leadership. Voters have reservations about all three of you as chief executive of New York City, a city with roughly 300,000 employees and a budget bigger than many countries. We have questions for each of you, and Mr. Cuomo, we will begin with you. As a former governor of New York, you obviously have the management experience, but you resigned from office amid sexual harassment and COVID-related scandals. Why should voters now trust that you have the character to be mayor? You have 1 minute.
Good. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. First, you are right. I left office. There was a report that was done that had allegations of harassment. I said at the time it was a political report and that there was no basis to it. It was then sent to 5 district attorneys. They all reviewed it. They found nothing. It was then litigated for 5 years. I was dropped from the cases. So
I did not know that he was not found guilty, or that they basically were like, we couldn't find evidence of this. I thought it was true. I needed to dig more into it, but I actually did not know this.
None of that came to anything. When it comes to executive experience, I've run the Department of Housing and Urban Development, built housing all across the nation. I was governor for 11 years. The budget is double what it is in New York City, and I got government to work. I passed groundbreaking laws, minimum wage, paid family leave, built projects that had never been built before. This is no job for on-the-job training. And if you look at the failed mayors, they're ones that had no management experience. Don't do it again.
Thank you.
Okay, I mean, you're saying you ran New York City. I don't know anyone who was really happy about the, let's say, cost of living in New York City, right? You know, I don't like Zohran Mamdani's policies, but he does speak to a real pain that is real pains and pressures that are felt by many New York City civilians. And I don't think that people, especially those who have lived under the reign of Cuomo, are going to be really that comforted by that answer that he just gave.
Thank you. Rosarinda?
Thank you, Sally. In the theme of leadership, Mr. Mamdani, you work as a foreclosure prevention counselor for winning seat in the State Assembly. You have no substantial management experience. How are you ready to lead the nation's largest and greatest city in the world in one day? You have a minute.
You know, I have the experience of having served in the New York State Assembly for 5 years and watching a broken political system, the experience of seeing a governor in Andrew Cuomo who would rather have served his billionaire donors and the working class New Yorkers who voted for him, and the experience amidst all of that of fighting and winning for working class taxi drivers to free them from predatory debt and delivering the first free bus lines in New York City history, and in working with unions and working class New Yorkers to finally raise taxes just that little bit on Mr. Cuomo's donors to start to fully fund our public school. And more than that, I have the experience of being a New Yorker, someone who has actually paid rent in the city before I ran for mayor, someone who has had to wait for a bus that never came, someone who actually buys his groceries in this same city. And what all of that experience has shown me, which Mr. Cuomo can't seem to understand, is that it is far too expensive and far too hard for New Yorkers to afford to live in this city. And the definition of experience is not doing the same thing again and again and hoping for a different result. That's actually the definition of insanity.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
Yo, I gotta give it to Zohran Mamdani. It's a really good answer. It's kind of weird how, like, of all the people who've spoken so far, he seems the closest to a self-assured, seasoned politician. Although, I had a friend tell me, hey, doesn't he kind of speak like he kind of went to what's it called, like a speech and debate club or something? I was like, yeah, makes total sense as someone who actually went to a speech and debate club myself.
I think I was invoked.
Yes.
In other words, what the Assemblyman said is he has no experience. And this is not a job for someone who has no management experience to run
Well, don't Assemblymen manage things? I'm not very familiar with Assemblymen, to be fair, but I don't think that Assemblymen do nothing. He's got 5 years of Assemblyman experience.
300,000 people, no financial experience to run $115 billion budget. He literally has never had a job. On his resume, it says he interned for his mother. This is not a job for a first-timer. Any day, you could have a hurricane, you have, God forbid, a 9/11, a health pandemic. If you don't know what you're doing, people could die.
Mr. Mamdani.
Yeah. He's got a good point, though. It's kind of funny that, like, if you took a 2015 Donald Trump, was more qualified to be mayor of New York than Zohran Mamdani. Donald Trump ran several businesses. Sure, he failed, but you've got to fail in order to succeed. He's managed budgets before. He's completed projects on budget and on time. And he's done that for decades before running for president in 2015. So, and then when Donald Trump ran for president in 2015, a lot of people were concerned because he had no political experience. So, if someone like him would have absolutely outclassed Zohran Mamdani in the experience department, I don't think that really looks great for Mamdani. Fortunately enough for Mamdani, Cuomo is, I think, rather battered from the sexual abuse scandal, and also people just generally don't trust him because he has not delivered the increase in quality of life that Mamdani is promising. So I think it's very unlikely that New Yorkers turn back to Cuomo unless they get scared by the socialism thing, which I think it's something to be scared of. But when people haven't lived under it, they don't really fear it. So.
Want to respond?
And if we have a health pandemic, then why would New Yorkers turn back to the governor who sent seniors to their death in nursing homes? That's the kind of experience that's on.
That's a bombshell. I got sleeping siblings, so I'm snapping my fingers here.
Offer here today. What I don't have in experience, I make up for in integrity, and what you don't have in integrity, you could never make up for in experience.
Yes. May I? First, what you said was totally false, as you know.
Which part was false?
During COVID, everyone did whatever they could in this state, and there have been numerous investigations where they've gone through it, and they said we followed federal guidance.
Also, what's up, Angry Canadian? Nice to see you in the chat there.
But yes, people died during COVID, and my heart breaks for everyone that died in this state and across this nation.
But just to be clear, just to fact check that, there is a criminal investigation reportedly underway at the DOJ about your testimony to Congress about your nursing home record.
Yeah, it's pretty blatant for him to be like, yeah, no, we didn't send people to nursing homes. People did what they had to do. It's like, yeah, and one of those things was sending who COVID infected people to nursing homes and having them die. Like, you can't, if you're gonna, I'm not even gonna encourage people to lie, but it's just wild to lie about something so, well known and something so true,
That is a political issue with the Congress. They made a referral, which has gone absolutely nowhere. But there have been multiple investigations where the DOJ found that the nursing home investigation was politically motivated.
Okay, we're going to move on. We might have time to come back to it. I do need to move on to Mr. Sliwa.
May I just finish my...
No, we know what happened, bro.
But the Assemblyman still says he has no experience.
Like, for example, if you ask them point blank, were people who had COVID sent into nursing homes? The answer is yes. Did those people who went to the nursing homes, they infect the patients there and kill them? Like, yes, that's something that happened, right? So, and it happened under his leadership. He was the one who said, this is how we handle COVID. So there's not a whole lot of wiggle room to turn this into a W or to say, oh, no, it didn't happen.
To do the job.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cuomo. Mr. Sliwa, as founder of the Guardian Angels and as a radio host, you've been a well-known figure in New York City for decades, but you also lack substantial management experience. So how are you prepared to be the chief executive officer of New York City? You have 1 minute, Mr. Sliwa.
First of all, I created the Guardian Angels to provide public safety in the subways and streets when government was incapable of doing so. I didn't do it to get a title or a paycheck. Secondarily, I don't declare myself to be all-knowing. I will hire the very brightest and best in their fields who have dedicated their lives to trying to improve the city of New York or the state or the federal government or the private sector. But what I will say is, thank God I'm not a professional politician. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of no cash bail, which has been a disaster. We have the architect and the apprentice here of Raise the Age. My own son was almost killed because of that in a gang attack. We have the architect and we have the apprentice of Close Rikers Island, which would just release criminals in the street. Thank God I'm not a professional politician because they have helped create this crime crisis in the city that we face, and I will
Thank you,
resolve.
Mr. Sliwa.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa.
Do they really plan on releasing criminals detained in Rikers Island just into the general public? This ain't the UK. Like, I would be shocked if they didn't at least publicly say, oh, no, we're going to send them to other jails. I don't think that we're so far left that we're just like, oh, just like, burn down the jail and let all the people out. Like, and I don't think that we're that far gone yet.
Candidates, President Trump has expressed intense interest in this election and in all of you personally. Mr. Mamdani, the president called you, quote, my little communist. Mr. Sliwa, he said you're, quote, not exactly prime time. And Mr. Cuomo, he has been critical of you, but said you have always gotten along. The president has threatened to cut federal funds to the city. And just yesterday, he killed the Gateway Project, the tunnel connecting New York to New Jersey. You've all promised to resist him in some way. What would you say in your first official call with the president to set the tone for your relationship moving forward? We'll give you a minute for this. We'll start with you, Mr. Mamdani.
I would make it clear to the president that I am willing to not only speak to him, but to work with him if it means delivering on lowering the cost of living for New Yorkers. That's something that he ran his presidential campaign on, and yet all he's been able to deliver thus far has been prosecuting his political enemies and trying to enact the largest deportation program in American history. And what distinguishes me from Andrew Cuomo is the fact that he has gotten on the phone with that same president, not asking him how to work together to help New Yorkers, or not telling him that he would refuse to back down to protect those New Yorkers, but instead asking him how to win this race. That's something I can do myself. I don't need the president's assistance for. And what I'd tell the president is if he ever wants to come for New Yorkers in the way that he has been, he's going to have to get through me as the next mayor of this city.
All right.
I think, sort of, barring the anti-law enforcement, like the pro-crime rhetoric, right? Where it's like, oh, if you want to get illegal immigrants, you have to come through me. I think this is a pretty good response. I don't know. I don't think that any Democratic New York City mayoral candidate has any business calling Trump and asking him for tips, on winning an election. Like, that's just weird.
Right. Mr. Cuomo, we'll give you a little extra time, but I'd like you to answer this question as well, what your first conversation with the president would be like.
Okay. First, I never had a conversation with the president that the assemblyman was talking about. But he has a distant relationship with the truth. I would say to the president in the first conversation, look, we have had many, many battles. We fought together every day during COVID. And the battles were bloody. And I'd like to avoid them. If you come after New York, you know what I'm going to do. It's going to be ugly. And my chances are almost 50-50, even though you're the president. I'd like to work with you. I think we can do good things together. But number one, I will fight you every step of the way if you try to hurt New York.
Unless he weaponizes the justice system to go after the attorney general of this state, in which case you'll issue a statement that doesn't even name the president. And no matter what you think about Donald Trump, you know that not even being able to name him is an act of cowardice. And that's what we would see from Donald Trump's puppet on the right.
Okay, but New York also did politically motivated prosecutions against Donald Trump. So, like, what do they say? They don't say that in love and war be nice. They say all's fair in love and war. I'm not condoning political prosecutions, by the way, in either direction. But I'm saying if you're going to engage in political prosecutions against Donald Trump, you don't get the right to come. And even if you're going to support those, as well as I'm quite sure Mamdani does, you don't get the right to complain about it when the same thing is being done to you.
I do want to get Ms. Sliwa, but Mr. Cuomo, I'll give you a few seconds to respond to that.
Yeah. I said political weaponization of the justice system is wrong. Both sides do it. It's wrong when Donald Trump does it. It's wrong when they did it to Comey. It's wrong when Comey did it to Hillary. Okay. It was wrong when it happened to Tish James.
Thank you, Mr. Cuomo. I want to give Mr. Sliwa a chance to answer this. Mr. Sliwa, your first official conversation with the president, what would you say to set the tone?
Well, first of all, there's high levels of testosterone in this room. I've had a love-hate relationship with Donald Trump that goes back over 30 years. But I know one thing. We have Andrew Cuomo. We have Zohran Mamdani. They want to take on Donald Trump. Look, you can be tough, but you can't be tough if it's going to cost people desperately needed federal funds. Zohran Mamdani, the president, has already said it's going to take $7 billion out of the budget right from the start if you're elected mayor. People are going to suffer in this city. People who need those federal funds. What I would do is sit and negotiate. I would say, look, Mr. President, we need that Gateway Tunnel. It moves millions of people from Washington, D.C. to Boston. But take away the Q train project. We don't need those 3 stations going from 96th Street to 125th. It's not a necessity. Sit with the president and whoever he delegates and try to negotiate. But if you try to get tough with Trump, the only people who are going to suffer from that are the people of New York City.
Okay, Mr. Sliwa, thank you. Brief response, Mr. Mamdani.
I sort of agree with that, although I don't like the rhetoric where it's like, oh, don't try to fight with Trump because you'll lose. It sort of propagates this defeatist attitude, which I don't think is particularly helpful. If you're trying to do political posturing, it's like, I'm not going to fight Trump because I think I'm going to lose. Like, there's a more pragmatic way that you can sort of, pitch and frame and approach this conversation.
You know, Mr. Trump is already suspending infrastructure grants to this city, and he's doing it in a blatant act of political retribution. And what it requires is leadership that will stand up to him. And I disagree with Mr. Sliwa. We do need to extend the 2nd Avenue subway to 100.
That ASL girl is cooking with the facial expressions. I just got to say.
And he's doing it in a blatant act of political retribution. And what it requires is leadership that will stand up to him. And I disagree with Mr. Sliwa. We do need to extend the 2nd Avenue subway to 125th Street. It was a promise made to Harlemites decades ago.
Okay.
It's time to actually fulfill it.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
Okay, quick question.
That actually raises a really good question. Is like, our current political administrations beholden to promises made from previous political administrations? This was something I thought that came to mind, I think, in the previous presidential election when we were discussing which treaties we should continue to uphold with various other countries, where it's like, you know, these treaties are like 100 years old or whatever. Should we continue to abide by them? But, you know, I think that questions about political principles can extend to the national level, the international level, or the local level as well. So it's like, you know, you make a promise to a certain people group inside your city, you know, does every single elected official have to abide by that? I think it's probably fair to abide by that, but does it mean they have to? It's a pretty good question.
Quick question for each of you. Mr. Cuomo, you've been asked this before.
He mentioned my name. Don't I get a chance to respond?
Well, we got a lot of ground to cover, Mr. Lee.
When was the last time you spoke with President Trump, Mr. Cuomo? You've been asked this before, and the last time you said you couldn't remember?
I believe it was during his assassination attempt.
So last year in 2024. Mr. Sliwa, when was the last time you spoke with President Trump?
Oh, many years ago. We were receiving awards. I was praising him for saving the annual Veterans Day parade. Those were the conversations that I had with him. Can I please respond? I was asked about the Q train.
Okay, real quick.
Hey,
Mamdani?
I am the mayor.
I do want to take a break to respond to a comment that was left here in the chat. Trevor America says, Mamdani can't even lift 335 pounds. I will say this. You know, and I say this as someone who is certainly not a socialist, certainly not a communist. I'm center right. Most people just call me conservative. I'm a Republican. That said, I don't think that his inability to lift 135 pounds has anything to do with his fitness to become New York City's next mayor. I don't think Sliwa could lift 135 pounds either. I don't think Cuomo could lift 135 pounds either. It's a failed political stunt. Has no bearing as to whether or not he would be a good mayor. I think he would be a bad mayor for reasons other than how many pounds he can lift. You know, it's a gaffe. It's funny, but I don't think it's the type of thing that should bring down a campaign, because there are more substantive reasons why Mamdani should not be the next mayor of New York City.
A mass transit. We do not need a Q train. I'm in the subways every day. We have more than a capable system of transporting people.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa.
The infrastructure needs to be fixed in the system that we have.
Mr. Mamdani,
yeah, but he's not answering the question of, so do we just like ignore or recant the promise made to the Harlemites, as Mamdani put it? You know, the promise was made to those people. Do we just say, oh, too bad, the people that made you that promise died? Like, you know, so I don't really love that rebuttal. I understand his reasoning, right? But I don't love that rebuttal, because it doesn't answer to the key tenet and the pillar of what Mamdani said, which was, I want to do this because I want to fulfill a promise that was made to these people.
Have you ever spoken with President Trump?
No.
Trevor America said Cuomo's brother could lift 135 pounds for sure. Yeah, I believe that, but that doesn't mean he should be mayor of New York City either.
Okay, there you go. Sally.
Thank you. Mr. Cuomo, a follow-up to that. President Trump has spoken positively about you and your candidacy, even as his Justice Department, as we've noted, is reportedly investigating you for allegations you lied to Congress over your COVID record. Given that dynamic, how would you be able to stand up to this White House? How are you not compromised? And just take into account that New Yorkers are troubled by what they view as a compromised relationship the current outgoing mayor has with the president.
Yeah. First, you're wrong when you say there's any investigation of me. That's not true.
Do you have evidence there is no investigation?
I've heard absolutely nothing. Congress did a press release. They said they sent a letter to the Department of Justice, which they do routinely to generate press, and that's what that is. I fought Donald Trump He investigated me repeatedly with the Department of Justice. The Department of Justice Inspector General said that it was actually politically motivated. That does not back me up. When I'm fighting for New York, I am not going to stop. And I'll tell you something else. If the Assemblyman is elected mayor, Donald Trump will take over New York City, and it will be Mayor Trump who runs New York City.
We have to move on to
well, that's not a reason to not vote for Mamdani. I also not entirely sure if Donald Trump would take over New York City. I don't even know how that would happen or what mechanisms he would use to make that happen. Trevor American in the chat says, I'm voting for Cuomo, can't stand Mamdani. Are you a Republican? If you're a Republican, why wouldn't you vote for Sliwa? That's my question.
Very quick follow-up, yes or no. You're saying unequivocally the Justice Department is not investigating you, correct?
I've heard absolutely nothing.
They could be, and you might not have heard it, but okay, we'll move on. David?
Okay, thank you, Sally.
That is virtually impossible, by the way.
Okay.
So, Mr. Cuomo, you did put out an ad the day after the news first broke in the New York Times that you were under investigation, calling it a political investigation, saying they were coming after you as they had to, after other Democratic politicians. You haven't denied this previously.
That the Republican Congress was. Yes, I believe they play politics with the justice system. Okay. I believe the Republican Congress does it. I believe Donald Trump does it. I believe the Democrats do it. And that's why I think people are sick and tired of the justice system and the politics.
If you think that there's no difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, then that's the candidate for you. If you think it's time to have a Democratic Party that actually stands up to Donald Trump and his billionaire-backed assault on working people,
thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
He never said there's no difference between the political parties. What are you talking about?
You're not a Democrat, right? You're not a Democrat. You're a Democratic socialist.
We have
you didn't vote for Kamala Harris, right?
We have other ground to cover. We have other ground to cover.
That's an incendiary charge. I want to be very.
You may have a chance to address it, but we do.
I'll be very
quick. A lot of issues to get to with New Yorkers, Mr. Mamdani.
I'll be very quick.
To say that he's a Democratic socialist that didn't vote for Kamala Harris isn't an incendiary charge. It's either true or it's not. Trevor America said I'm independent. Oh, okay, I see. Wait, are you conservative though? If you're independent, it's even more confusing. Why are you voting for the middle of the road candidate? Not middle of the road, but why are you voting for the liberal candidate rather than Curtis Sliwa? I guess, are you closer to liberalism than you are to conservatism?
You didn't say leave it blank in the Kamala
I'll be very
campaign?
quick. I said leave it blank in the presidential primary because primaries are a place to air dissent. And like many Americans, I was horrified by the Israeli genocide of Palestinians. And
I voted against Donald Trump in the primary, in the GOP primaries in 2024, in the 2024 election. So.
If you want to look for me on the ballot, you'll find me as the Democrat.
Mr. Mamdani, thank you. We have to move on. This week, the world is reacting to President Trump's Israel-Hamas peace deal and the release of the hostages. And many are cautiously optimistic about a lasting peace. Of course, the mayor has no direct role in foreign affairs, and we certainly have a lot of questions for you about city matters. But this war has been a major topic in the campaign. And there are criticisms about your positions in the past and how you envision leading on these issues as mayor. So we have questions for all of you, but first for Mr. Mamdani, because of something you said that's been generating headlines in the news today as we come into the debate yesterday on Fox News. You were asked if Hamas should lay down its weapons, key to the peace plan and ceasefire. And some say they found your answer confusing. You said, quote, I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety and the fact that anything has to abide by international law. And that applies to Hamas, and that applies to the Israeli military. So for the voters tuning in tonight, Mr. Mamdani, what do you believe about Hamas and how lasting peace will be achieved? We know it's a complicated matter, but we'd like you to keep your answer to a minute if you could.
Of course, I believe that they should lay down their arms. I'm proud to be one of the first elected officials in the state who called for a ceasefire. And calling for a ceasefire means ceasing fire. That means all parties have to cease fire and put down their weapons. And the reason that we call for that is not only for the end of the genocide, but also an unimpeded access of humanitarian aid. I, like many New Yorkers, am hopeful that this ceasefire will hold. I'm hopeful that it is durable. I'm hopeful that it is just. And for it to be just, we also have to ensure that it addresses the conditions that preceded this, conditions like occupation, like the siege, and apartheid. And that is what I'm hopeful for.
Wow, I love all that condemnation that he gave of Hamas there. Bro was asked, what do you think about Hamas? And he said, yeah, I think that Israel should cease the occupation of Palestine. Which is like, this guy is very transparent. Well, that's not even entirely true, but he was relatively transparent before he, really started getting the gears of his campaign going. This guy is radically pro-Hamas from what I can tell. It took him several months to even catch on to, maybe I shouldn't be saying, globalize the Intifada in supporting violent rhetoric like that. I'm not at all disappointed that he didn't condemn Hamas here. I'm just surprised that he didn't even say, Hamas is bad, or offer some pity words of condemnation regarding Hamas to members of the crowd that he knows don't like terrorism, who knows they don't like Islamic extremism.
If I may, that means from the river to the sea.
I'm being marginalized out of this.
I'm sorry.
It's a debate of three. Excuse me, Andrew. It's a debate of three. Do we acknowledge that? Three people?
Mr. Sliwa, go ahead, and we'll give you a second. Go ahead, Mr. Sliwa.
The President of the United States should have been applauded by you, Zohran Mamdani, and you, Andrew Cuomo, on the day that he brought together that international coalition that met in Egypt, that came from the Middle East and the Persian Gulf. I certainly applauded him for bringing peace to Gaza and trying to end the hostilities in the war between the Israelis and Hamas, so there can be peace between the Israelis and peace between the Palestinians. But you seem, Zohran, to be incapable of praising our president. And Andrew, you were incapable of praising our president. Give credit where credit is due. He's brought peace to Gaza.
It's an interesting point to make, but I think it's a lot more important to be like, well, why are you unwilling to criticize Hamas than say, oh, why don't you genuflect before Donald Trump? I think that it's a lot more pertinent, right? Because if you've got someone who's a mayor of New York City who is going to be partial towards or supportive of Hamas and similar terrorist organizations, that's a problem. Because what if they start, feeling emboldened to form terrorist cells within New York City? That's not good. So, I really wish you went with the tack of like, why didn't you condemn Hamas? Which we all know the answer, but I think it's a good thing to ask on a semi-national stage such as this.
We want to hear everything you have to say. We have other questions on the matter. Mr. Cuomo, please, brief response, because we do have other questions on this issue that you may be able to address. Go ahead.
I did applaud President Trump and his administration. I think it was a great accomplishment. I hope the peace holds. The assemblyman will not denounce Hamas. The assemblyman will not denounce Hassan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11.
Yo, I heard that Zohran Mamdani spoke about Hassan Piker. I didn't know that Cuomo was the one who brought that up. That's crazy. Bro, I wonder if there's a clip of him reacting to this moment. I'm not going to pull it up, but I wonder if there's a clip of that.
Will not denounce Hassan Piker, who said America deserved 9/11. The assemblyman just said in his response, well, it depends on occupation. That is code, meaning that Israel does not have a right to exist as a Jewish state, which he has never acknowledged. That is from the river to the sea. That's why he won't denounce globalize the Intifada, which means kill all Jews.
I'm going to say it's racist to say that Israel should exist as a Jewish state. I would say that. No one would say America should exist as a white state. No one would say that, I don't know, well, some people would actually probably say that South Africa should exist as a black state. But like, it's sort of weird how supporting an ethno-state is bad until it's time to talk about Israel doing it, right? I think Israel has a right to exist. I think it should be multicultural, or at least it should allow Arabs to live there as well, and Palestinians. Like, they should be able to have citizenship and enjoy all of the benefits thereof. Certainly Jews should feel safe at home in Israel, but I don't think that it means that Israel needs to be a place only for Jews.
Mr. Mr. Mamdani a chance to respond to that.
I want to be very clear. The occupation is a reference to international law and the violation of it, which Mr. Cuomo has no regard for since he signed up to be Benjamin Netanyahu's legal defense team during the course of this genocide. And I find the comments that Hassan made on 9/11 to be objectionable and reprehensible. And I also think that part of the reason why Democrats are in the situation that we are in, of being a permanent minority in this country, is we are looking only to speak to journalists and streamers and Americans with whom we agree of every single thing that they say. We need to take the case to every person, and I'm happy to do that, which is why I was on Fox News yesterday talking about how I wish it was more like NASCAR so we could see all the billionaires who are sponsoring you right on your suit jacket.
Melissa has another.
I don't know. I think that the suits would be very ugly, but he makes a really good point that, you know, when you're trying to reach the people, you shouldn't be trying to cater to the wishes of the journalists and the media and the streamers. You've got to cater to the wishes of you know, what normal citizens actually want, which is why Mamdani, I think, has sort of had one of the best local campaigns that we've seen that has received national coverage, because, you know, times are tough. We're more or less in a recession, I would say. We need people to look at the American people and be like, hey, you know, I see that there are issues here with cost of living in all these places. It's not just New York City that's having these problems. You know, inflation is an issue. You know, so at least to say I feel your pain, or at least, you know, things need to change and we need to make things better, is better than pretending that everything is fine like Donald Trump tends to do, or focusing on these social issues. You know, he's right that this is sort of the blueprint for how we need to speak to constituents. Not we, I'm not a politician, but how politicians should speak to constituents.
Turn it to Sally, actually.
Yeah, actually, this kind of flows, and then we'll go back to Melissa. Mr. Mamdani, you told NBC's Meet the Press that you don't believe it's the role of the mayor to police speech. Your words about this war have comforted many New Yorkers, but they've troubled others, and I want to ask about some of this. There is your recent refusal, as we just discussed, to condemn the slogan, Globalize the Intifada, which many view as a call to arms. In 2017, you rapped lyrics praising the Holy Land Five. These are men who were convicted of supporting terrorism. How would you assure New Yorkers, especially Jewish residents who might be concerned about this, that you would be a mayor for all? You have 1 minute to answer this.
Thank you for this opportunity. When I am speaking about the responsibility of leading this city, I mean leading not just those who voted for me, leading not just those who vote, but leading every single person who calls this city home. And that includes Jewish New Yorkers. And I have been so thankful for the opportunity I've had to sit with so many Jewish New Yorkers over the course of the primary and through the general. And it's in those conversations that I learned that this phrase evokes many painful memories. Memories of bus attacks in Haifa, of restaurant attacks in Jerusalem. And I heard from a rabbi about their roommate who was killed on one of those buses. And in hearing that and the distance between that impact and the rationale that some use of saying it, of speaking about the Israeli occupation of Palestinian land, is why I said that I would discourage this language that I do not use. And what I'm looking to do as the first Muslim mayor of this city is to ensure that—
When did he say that he discouraged that? I can't remember.
Bring every New Yorker together, Jewish New Yorkers, Muslim New Yorkers, every single person that calls the city home, that they understand they won't just be protected, but they will belong.
Mr. Sliwa, we will get to you. First, I'm going to ask a question of Mr. Cuomo. While you are a strong supporter of Israel, you have also been slow to develop a relationship with the city's Muslim community. You have called Mr. Mamdani a terrorist sympathizer. How do you assure those New Yorkers, especially Muslims and Arabic New Yorkers, that you will be a mayor for all? You'll have 1 minute.
Yeah. Well, first, I think
doesn't this assume that's a very that's a horrible question. It assumes that Muslims support terrorism. I don't. Maybe the more honest question is, are you saying that Muslims are terrorists? I don't know. But the way that she framed the question made me think that, oh, like you condemn terrorists and you're condemning people who support terrorists. Don't you worry that might hurt you in the Muslim community? Like, What a whack question. Who wrote this?
The assemblyman created the perception himself. Why wouldn't he condemn Hamas? Why wouldn't he condemn Hassan Piker? Why did it take us here tonight for the first time for him to say it? He still won't denounce globalize the intifada, which means kill all Jews. Just say, I denounce it. He won't do it. That's the issue.
Mr.
And his
Cuomo,
divisiveness
can you address the question
is
that we're
chronic.
putting to you? I think you've made the point, but can you please answer about your own relationship with the Muslim community? You did not visit mosques for many years. More recently, you have been.
Yeah, I don't think in any way the assemblyman is representative of the Muslim community, which is a vital community in New York City, and I am very fond of, and I've been working with. I think he's playing his own politics. Many of his positions don't even follow the Muslim faith, so I see them as two totally separate things.
Mr. Mamdani, you want to respond?
You know, it took Andrew Cuomo being beaten by a Muslim candidate in the Democratic primary for him to set foot in a mosque. He had more than 10 years, and he couldn't name a single mosque at the last debate we had that he visited. And what Muslims want in this city is what every community wants and deserves. They want...
Who cares? Are you electing the New York City mayor or the Muslim Pope? What is this? Oh my goodness.
Equality, and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even...
Look, if I was a Democrat, I'm a Christian. If I was a Democrat, I wouldn't be like, oh, how many Christian or Catholic churches have you gone to, Zohran Mamdani? It doesn't matter. I'm not electing you to be my pastor. Like, I'm not electing you to be the head of the Southern Baptist Convention. Like, come on, let's be real.
Deserves. They want equality and they want respect. And it took me to get you to even see those Muslims as part of this city. And that, frankly, is something that is shameful and is why so many New Yorkers have lost faith in this politics.
Yeah.
Famously, you can't see Muslims as part of the community until you go to a mosque.
You know, that is totally false. I worked with the Muslim community for many years.
Name a single mosque you went to when you were the governor. Can you name a single mosque you went to in 10 years?
Before you were ever here. They were
before I was here.
Before you were even in state government. I worked with the Muslim community. Imams presided over State of the States. We worked in religious working groups, tolerance groups, anti-Semitic groups, etc.
That's crazy. So Cuomo was saying, I've literally done stuff to include Muslims in my administration. I've worked on tolerance projects to increase tolerance in the city. And what Mamdani is complaining about is that he hasn't gone to a mosque. Bro, I think that bro's doing evangelistic politics. You're like, you know how people talk about doing evangelistic dating, or it's like, I'm going to date you to try to bring you into my religion. It sounds like that's what he's doing with politics, where Mamdani's on stage trying to goad the people on stage to go to a mosque so that they can be converted. Like, bro, nah. Look, this is not a town hall at a church. This is it's not a town hall at a mosque. This is a political debate. So with that being said, maybe focus on, actual political impacts. This is actually an exchange I think Mamdani is losing, because Cuomo is has been given an opportunity to talk about all the collaboration that he's done with Muslims and how he's included them in his political activities before Mamdani was even thinking about becoming politics. He was probably still back in Uganda when Cuomo was doing all this collaboration with all these Muslims and imams. I think Mamdani took a big L on this one, which is crazy considering that he's the Muslim in the room.
Gentlemen, Mr. Sliwa, Rosarita has a specific question for you, but I'll give you a second here just to weigh in.
This is what disturbs me about you. You will be celebrating your birthday this weekend. In 1991, I was in the streets of Crown Heights with the Guardian Angels for 30 days and 30 nights when the first Democratic Socialist mayor of New York City, that's right, David Dinkins, was a proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America, abandoned the Jews for 3 days. They were left to their own means. And we protected them for 30 days and 30 nights. Then your favorite mayor, Bill de Blasio, in 2019, abandoned the Jews again when they were being attacked in Williamsburg, in Borough Park, and Crown Heights. And I had to bring the Guardian Angels in for 30 days, 30 nights. Jews don't trust that you are going to be there for them when they are victims of anti-Semitic attacks.
Okay. Brief response, Mr. Mamdani. We have a specific question for you from Rosarita, but Mr. Mamdani, please.
I agree, by the way.
One of the most meaningful experiences I've had over the course of this campaign has been the conversations I've had with Jewish New Yorkers. Jewish New Yorkers who've told me about the door that they've had to lock that they had kept open for 40 years. Jewish New Yorkers who've told me on the M57 about an apartment the speech therapist was trying to sell when a realtor told her, put the Jewish books off the table. Jewish New Yorkers who've told me about their fear in living in this city. And I will be a mayor who finally addresses that, not through the theatrics of the politics on this stage, but through action. I'll do that by ensuring that we have police officers outside of synagogues on the high holy days.
Gentlemen, we have a lot to get to, and we do have a specific question for Mr. Sliwa.
He needs to be more direct in the practical things he's going to do to protect Jews. He talked a whole lot, and all I heard was that he's going to put police officers in front of synagogues, which, sure, I don't think that's a bad thing to do. But I don't think that dissuades any Jews who are concerned that, his support of radical Islamic terrorist groups and ideologies, might cause him to turn a blind eye to the Jewish community, in sensitive situations, or like Curtis Sliwa said, his connection to the Democratic Socialists of America would cause him to have similar callousness to them when they're experiencing religiously or ethnically targeted violent attacks.
Rosarina.
Thank you, David. Mr. Sliwa, you've called for tougher policing of pro-Palestinian protests, and you've suggested that Mr. Mamdani uses languages that is anti-Semitic. How do you assure New Yorkers that you'll be the mayor for all?
Well, I've been there for all people in all times for 46 years as leader of the Guardian Angels here and around the world. Whether it is a religious violation of people's rights to worship as they choose in a mosque, in a church, in a synagogue, or a shul, whether it's because of racial identity. Remember, in the summer of 2020, Asians were under constant attack because of the lockdown and pandemic. I don't remember Governor Cuomo coming to their aid. You were the governor then. I was out there going into all the neighborhoods, Flushing, Bayside. We were in down in Bensonhurst. We were in Chinatown itself, where Asians were being attacked indiscriminately because they were thought to be carrying COVID. We protected them then. Governor, you were not there for them. De Blasio was not there for them. We understand hate, and in order to counteract hate, you have to get the community involved along with the police to protect people when they're under siege. Jews are under attack now more than ever before. And I don't believe either of you have the capabilities of protecting them with increased anti-Semitism.
That is pure
really
fiction. I passed the
really
no hate in our state, the strongest hate crime law in the United States of America. We tolerate no hatred.
Look, you can pass the laws, but if you don't arrest people and charge them and indict them for these crimes, then it doesn't matter. Like what? Like, didn't Joe Biden pass the no more inflation bill? A whole lot of good that did.
No discrimination. We are from every place on this globe, and
unless
we are
it's
proud
you
of
that's
it.
perpetrating
and, excuse me, and we're tolerant, and we accept. If you notice, the Assemblyman still won't say he believes that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish state. He is a divisive personality all across the board. NYPD are racist. Barack Obama is evil, liar, and he gave the finger to the Christopher Columbus statue.
By the way, Cuomo, your laws with no cash bail turn the haters right back in the street to violate and attack again and again and again.
Thank you.
You're the reason for that. No cash bail.
Thank
You
you.
don't know what you're talking about.
Thank you. Go ahead.
There have been a number of absolutely unfounded lies that have been said by Andrew Cuomo. I would just like a moment to address them directly. I've said time and again that I recognize Israel's right to exist. I've said that I will not recognize any states. I said that I will not.
As a Jewish state.
Doesn't need
If
to be
I
a
would
Jewish
be
state.
allowed to finish, that I would not recognize any state's right to exist with a system of hierarchy on the basis of race or religion. I have made that very clear.
There we go. So for the pro-Palestinians, I am not what most would consider to be pro-Palestinian, although I do really want them to have a really high quality of life. And I think that, the first goal, of course, has to be ending the Israel-Hamas war. But then after that, I think the number one priority when it comes to what's going on over there has to be improving the quality of life for not just the Palestinians who are in Gaza, but also for Palestinians who are in the West Bank, which there are bad things happening to Palestinians in the West Bank that a lot of people aren't really paying attention to because of the Israel-Hamas war, which is understandable. When you've got rockets flying back and forth all over the place, then it makes sense to look over there rather than, a few bulldozers over in the West Bank. But still, Palestinians in both areas deserve to be protected. Of all the things that Palestine supporters say, however, the thing I agree with them the most is that Israel should not be an ethno-state. I think that, especially considering everything that's been going on in the region, I think it would be best if there was a one-state solution. Just the state of it. I don't think this has ever happened, but I think that it would be great if the whole region was just Israel, and you've got Arabs living there, Palestinians living there, Jews living there. You get everything under the same jurisdiction. First of all, you probably have a more even quality of life across the entire area. And second of all, it would probably be harder for terrorist groups to be hiding in any of those areas because, you've got police running around. You've got various military installations probably across the entire country. So, this is probably one of the few things that I would agree with a pro-Palestine supporter on in a very, very important way, where it's like the minute that you say Palestine needs to exist as a Jew, or Israel needs to exist as a Jewish state, I'm done with a lot of what you have to say about the region, because I am not a fan of ethno-states, and maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive to that as being a person of color, and also being on the right and seeing alt-right, white alt-right individuals laud, support, call for, and yearn for a white ethno-state in the United States of America. But I just don't think that ethno-states of any ethnicity should exist. So, no, I don't think that Israel should exist as a purely Jewish state. If it's majority Jewish, that's fine. But I think it's a problem if Arabs, for example, are not allowed to be citizens or they're not allowed to run for office. I think it's a big problem. And any state that exists like that, you're not going to see me wholeheartedly endorsing or supporting or rooting for it. Don't Back Up says the problem is, what does this have to do with New York? Don't Back Up has got to be one of my favorite new chatters I've ever had in the stream. This is a really good question.
To exist with a system of hierarchy on the basis of race, of religion.
I think it's because this conversation is sort of about, are you going to protect Muslims and Jews in New York? And so your rhetoric surrounding this is going to make those people feel welcome, because let's say that you've got a lot of Jews attacking Muslims, for example. I'm not saying that this is happening or will happen, but let's say that's something that happens. The Muslims in New York City are going to be like, well, I want to make sure that I vote for a mayor who's going to protect me, and vice versa. Let's say that a bunch of Muslims start attacking Jews. Those people are also probably going to vote for a New York City mayor who's like, hey, I want someone who's going to protect me. So the rhetoric surrounding this is sort of, the goal of that is to build trust with members of those various demographics, if that makes sense. So I know it kind of seems a little backwards, right? It's halfway across the world. It's the middle of the day probably over there, and it's 11 p.m. down here. So, but yeah, no, that's what it's really all about. So it does kind of circle back to the citizens of New York.
Made that very clear, and part of that is because I'm an American who believes in the importance of equal rights being enshrined in every single country, whether we're speaking about Israel or whether we're speaking about Saudi Arabia. You can stand here and you can lie all you want, but New Yorkers know.
We have the question. We want to address some issues here.
All right, and we have another polarizing issue that we would love to discuss with you candidates. And let's talk about the National Guard here in the city of New York. Now let's go back to Mr. President Donald Trump. One threat hanging over the city is the deployment of the National Guard troops, like he has done, as you all know, in other cities. The NYPD commissioner has rejected the idea as unnecessary, but the president ordered troops to hit the streets of New York. Now, how would you respond? Mr. Sliwa, you have a minute.
I'm really curious to see how they answer this question, considering the fact that New York, the National Guard has been pretty popular in the areas that it's been deployed to. When we're speaking about regular laymen, of course, you're going to have the progressives and the liberal protesters who are like, oh, big scary men with guns must mean fascism. But when we're talking about people in just like ordinary Americans in lower income areas that are ravaged by crime, they're enjoying being able to go out and go to the groceries, go get groceries with their kids in tow without worrying about being attacked violently. So, really curious to see whether or not they've been taking the temperature on that, and if they're going to try to defy that and appeal more to the progressive base of the Democratic Party, or sort of appeal to what ordinary Americans are sort of looking for as far as governance of their local municipalities.
No need for the National Guard in New York. Kathy Hochul, the governor, when we had a crime crisis in the subways that I'm well familiar with, being down there all the time, unlike my two adversaries, she sent 750 National Guardsmen down into the subways in 2024. Remember the horrible case of Debrina Kawan? Does anybody even say her name anymore? That woman who was set on fire by that migrant. As a result of that, the worst crime I've ever seen committed in the subway system, the governor did the right thing. She sent an additional 250 National Guardsmen, giving us a total of 1,000 National Guardsmen in the subway system.
Bro, I ain't never heard anyone praise Kathy Hochul before. I'm not saying that I don't like these decisions, but I'm feeling whiplash right now. She's one of the most unpopular American politicians that I've ever seen talked about nationally.
Mayor Eric Adams was telling us it was all a perception. So Governor Hochul has responded. I would tell the President of the United States, since I'm familiar with cities all across America having guardian angels there, if you were going to send the National Guard, you don't need to send them to New York City. There are other cities that could desperately use their help in dealing with their crime crisis.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa. Mr. Mamdani, how would you respond?
He makes a good point, because New York City has a lot of cops. They just sort of been defanged by a lot of politically motivated DAs and judges, and bad systems such as cashless bail. I think if you sort of get rid of all of that, you don't really actually need the cops. None of these places that have the National Guard technically need the National Guard. The only reason that the National Guard is out there, and the only reason that it's helping, is because the police in these areas are either not doing anything or they're not doing enough. It's probably not the fault of the police officers. It's actually probably not the fault of the police unions either, right? A lot of these police officers are demoralized by the lack of support that they get from the rest of the administrations in the local areas that they serve. That's why you're seeing a lot of police officers leaving police forces. Police forces in many places actually struggle to maintain the workforce that they need. In large part, it's because, bro, why am I going to arrest people for crimes who are going to be let back out on the street? I don't want to be rearresting the same person month after month, okay? So National Guard isn't really needed. Trump is just doing the job of these local areas for them, and they're getting mad about it because they don't want to tackle crime. They support crime, these Democrats in these blue cities.
I agree with Police Commissioner Tisch in that we do not need the National Guard here in New York City. We do not need them for the purpose of safety, because if it was safety that President Trump was so concerned about, he would send them to the 8 out of 10 states that have the highest levels of crime in this country, but he won't, because they're all run by Republicans. What New Yorkers need is a mayor who can... I
don't think it's about intimidation, but I do think he makes a good point. This is largely political. There are places, I will say the majority of, it's not about crime, right? Violent crime. If you look at violent crime, the majority of those places are in blue cities. I think especially if you look at murders per capita. However, I think the number one city is like St. Louis or something. It's like a red city. So I think that I forget whatever red city that is. Trump needs to send the National Guard over there as well, right? Very clearly, this is like a political thing, but at the same time, he is helping the areas that he's sending the National Guard to. So I'm not going to complain about it too much.
Can stand up to Donald Trump and actually deliver on that safety. When Donald Trump sent ICE agents on people in Los Angeles, Andrew Cuomo said that New Yorkers need not overreact. That is the furthest answer that New Yorkers are looking for. They are looking for someone who will lead, someone who will say that they will have their back, someone who will actually fight for the people of this city. And that's who I am, because I'm not funded by the same donors that gave us Donald Trump's second term, which isn't something that Andrew Cuomo can say.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
Yeah, first, the answer in the subways is not more National Guard. I put National Guard in the subways also. It's more NYPD is the answer. But the National Guard is not, he's not sending in the National Guard.
Don't Back Up says if you don't report crime, it won't show up in the stats. Furthermore, if you don't prosecute crime, it won't show up in the stats. So if you have these activist DAs continually letting out people, right, through what's it called, a restorative justice and things like that, where it's like, oh, you're black, well, we don't want any more black people in jail, you're free to go, then what you're going to see is crime going down. That doesn't mean that fewer crimes being committed. It means that less crime is being prosecuted.
To do any real function. It's control, it's power. He's trying to say these Democrats don't know how to run these cities, and it's a political gesture by sending in the National Guard. He has said if the assemblyman is elected, he will take over New York. Forget the National Guard.
But this is
he
not
has
the
said, I'm
question.
going to take the funds.
If they order the troops to come here, what would you do?
Well, I went through this with him. He sent the National Guard to 20 cities when I was governor. You know what city he didn't send them to? New York. Why? Because I said to him, don't you dare, we don't need it, and he backed down, and he will again.
So that proves a good relationship
Wait a
with
second. The president is going to back down to you, Andrew Cuomo. I know you think you're the toughest guy alive, but let me tell you something. You lost your own primary, right? You were rejected by your Democrats.
I love that Mamdani is laughing in agreement with what he's saying here.
And you have a difficult understanding that what the term no is. You're not going to stand up to Donald Trump.
I agree with Curtis.
You're not going to stand up to Donald Trump. And he can't stand up to Donald Trump, who knocked him right on his tuchus.
You negotiate with him. You don't fight with him, because only the people of New York City will lose.
You have to stand up to negotiate.
We have a follow-up.
I'd like to see a show of hands. Are there any circumstances where any of you would allow the NYPD to cooperate with the National Guard if Trump sent them to New York? Show of hands. Yes? No takers. Okay. Moving on.
That's absolutely insane. There are a million things that could happen in a small number of years. And to say that there is no situation in which the NYPD would collaborate with the National Guard at all, not only that's just extremely, I can't imagine that being anything other than a partisan reaction, except that Curtis Lee wasn't raising his hand either. That's wild. That's wild.
On if history as a guide, National Guard troops in the city could trigger protests. And we have questions for each of you about how you would handle that. So, Mr. Sliwa, you have been arrested for protesting migrant housing and for trying to serve Mayor Bill de Blasio with court papers. How would your NYPD handle protests? And would you continue participating in protests as mayor? You have 1 minute.
Well, I have been arrested oftentimes in civil disobedience. That is a great American right. But demonstrations have a time and a place. And it used to be before Bill de Blasio, I know he was your favorite mayor, Zohran Mamdani, that you'd have to get a permit. There's a time period you were in a structured area. You get a sound permit. It could be turned around in a day. If there was going to be civil disobedience, you discussed it with the police department. And obviously, you had an opportunity of expressing your anger or your outrage at whatever it was that motivated you to sit down in the street, to block traffic or block an egress. Now we have rampaging groups that go running through the streets, that enter all kinds of facilities and violate other people's rights. And there's no one who's willing to stop it. When I'm the mayor, there are rules and regulations. Everybody has the right to demonstrate. But you can't violate other people's rights, or you yourself must be arrested. And I would remove the face coverings. Remove those face coverings. Why are you afraid of identifying who you are as a demonstrator, unless maybe you're an agent provocateur who's been sent in here to cause chaos?
Thank you. Rosarina?
You know, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about the face coverings thing. A lot of people don't know this, but the vast majority of American states, it's illegal to walk around with a face covering. Now, maybe you could say, hey, once the sun goes down, you have to take that off your face covering. That actually might be extremely helpful. If you remember back at the Summer of Love, the majority of the violence was done by Antifa people, not necessarily BLM, although they're clearly, it seemed like gang activity, I would say, but not necessarily BLM affiliated individuals. But there were lots of opportunist looters, let's say, as well as Antifa rioters walking around with face masks on, committing acts of violence, burning things down, looting and stuff, and they were wearing masks. I think that if there's maybe a protest where there is violence happening, like let's say you've got a protest where people are smashing in car windows or whatever, right? Then I think that you can say, okay, you've got to remove your masks, identify yourselves. Right. So if you've got like a protest that's no longer peaceful, then sure, remove your mask. Or if the sun has gone down, sure, you remove your masks. But I don't know that it should be illegal to just like wear a mask, you know.
Question goes to you, Mr. Mamdani. You were arrested for blocking traffic in a pro-Palestinian protest, and you participated in a sit-in at Grand Central. Protesters offered block streets, bridges, and hubs like Grand Central. How much of that would you allow as mayor, and what's your line in having the NYPD arrest protesters? You have a minute.
This is a good question. Most people don't like the roads being blocked when they're trying to get to work, or, you know, take their wife to the hospital who's in labor, you know, so.
Protest is a part of what makes this city's history what it is.
I'm glad that he's answering the question that she asked of whether or not protests are a part of what makes the city's history what it is.
It is a part of the First Amendment. We deserve to have a mayor who stands up for that First Amendment, especially as we have a president that's looking to shred it at each and every opportunity. And we will continue to have protests in this city, as we should, no matter who is the mayor. And the line will be on the question of breaking the law. What we have today, however.
For the record, it's illegal to block the road.
Is an attempt to intimidate so many who are looking to use that freedom of expression to share their opinions about the city and the world around them. And to be frank with you, what New Yorkers are looking for is someone who can show leadership in City Hall. Because when they don't see that leadership, that's when so many take to the streets. And if you had a leader like Andrew Cuomo, who was telling people not to overreact when they see ICE agents abducting girls as young as 6 years old to deport them, many New Yorkers will take to the streets. We deserve to...
This is such a stupid take, because the two big things that you see people protesting, the New York City mayor has no jurisdiction or power over. So, for example, the New York mayor can't fix the Israel-Hamas war. That's what a lot of people were protesting. He can't also keep ICE from enforcing immigration law. Another thing people are protesting, I know that he probably thinks that he can, but he can't, right? Not legally. So, you know, Mom needs to be like, oh no, I'll just be such a dope mayor. Like Rose over here, nah, I'm gonna be such a dope mayor that they're not even gonna feel like rioting, bruh. But like, that's not how it works. It's not how it works, especially when they're protesting things that are outside of your control.
To have a leader who will actually be following through on the values of the city. That's the leader that I'll be.
Mr. Mamdani, just a quick follow-up. If you're elected, would you still participate in protests?
No, if I'm elected, I'll be the mayor, and I'll be leading the city from City Hall.
Yeah, but no participation in protests, right?
The important thing is to lead from City Hall. That's what I'll be doing.
Okay.
Yeah. If I may respond, because I believe my name was invoked.
A very brief response, and then I have a question for you.
I dealt with ICE. I stood up with ICE. I had a war with ICE here in New York when I was governor. And I stood them down, and they moved out. What the Assemblyman is saying is he doesn't believe in law and order. He believes in defunding the police, disarming the police, disbanding the police. That's who he is.
Cuomo,
abolish jails.
Sorry, I have a question for you.
I don't think that he said all of that.
And then just 15 seconds, because we have a question for Mr. Cuomo.
Mr. Cuomo lies again and again and again. I am not running to defund the police. I am running to actually work with the police to deliver public safety. Andrew Cuomo says that he has stood up to ICE. He has not said a word about the abductions that are happening right now.
He's referring to a previous comment you made, and we will get back to this. But Mr. Cuomo, a question for you.
It's a comment he made. Is the operative language.
Yes, I understand. I said that. As governor, you put the National Guard on standby during the George Floyd protests. You didn't deploy them. As mayor, talk about how you would balance the right to protest with maintaining order in the streets.
The right to protest.
Sliwa needs to get more answers, more questions.
To protest is a sacred right. There is no doubt about that. But the law is the law also. And you have New Yorkers now who are afraid in this city. They're afraid of Donald Trump coming, they're afraid of that anarchy, and they're afraid of the anarchy in this city itself. We have to provide public safety that makes New Yorkers feel safe. Demonstration is one thing. Violating the law is something else. Blocking public transit is something else. Stopping students students from going to class is something else. Harassment, intimidation, that's a hate crime. That's illegal. Enforce the law. Respect the police. They're not racists, as the assemblyman calls them. They're not a threat to public safety, as he says. They're not anti-queer. They are here to protect New Yorkers, work with them, fortify them.
You know, that's ironic that you say that now,
I'm sorry,
Andrew Cuomo, because when you were governor for 8 years, your parole board released 43 cop killers back into the street. Your father, when he was governor, released none. I knew Mario Cuomo. You know Mario Cuomo, Andrew Cuomo. You released cops. Don't say you're pro-police.
That's a pretty good response. I'm also, for full transparency, realizing that my computer might run out of space to fit this whole VOD. So I am going to be trying to copy some older VODs I have on my hard drive to an external hard drive. So if you see any glitching or weird stuff, that's probably why. But, you know, nothing crazy should be happening. But, you know, all I'm doing is reacting to a video. But if you see any glitches, that's the cause of that.
Briefly, to the comments that Mr. Cuomo raised about things you've said about police, you can do a brief response to that.
I have been clear time and time again that as much as Andrew Cuomo wants to bring up tweets from 2020, which is around the same time that he was sending seniors to their death in nursing homes, I am looking to work with police officers,
good answer,
not to defund the NYPD. Looking to
also, he should point out the majority of people who did those calls to defund the police have since recanted on that when they saw that didn't work. I mean, I feel like that's a slam dunk where it's like, hey, it's not just me who's backing down for that messaging. The entire Democratic Party is back down for that messaging.
Sure that officers can actually do one job when they're signing up to join that department.
But he's
not the many jobs we're asking them to do today.
He was specifically referring to comments you made. We will come back to that, but we're out of time.
Okay, corrupt
candidates
and racist.
We're moving on.
That's what you said. Your words. Your words.
We're moving on. Thank you. Despite record low crime numbers, polls show that crime remains a top concern for New York City voters. The three of you have very different approaches to crime fighting and how to manage the NYPD. We want to get into your plans. So we'll start with this question. It's a two-part question, but it's short. How will you make the city safer? And how will you change the NYPD? You'll have 1 minute. We begin with Mr. Cuomo.
I would add 5,000. Well, let's take a step back. Remember what happened. The far left, the socialists said defund the police, defund the police. They took $1 billion out of the police. The NYPD is now down at one of the lowest levels in modern political history. I would add 5,000 police, put 1,500 in the subways, raise the starting salary because you can't hire them. You can't even fill a class right now. And you have to add additional police officers because the attrition rate is so high. Part of that is going to be saying to the NYPD, I respect you. I don't think you're wicked, as the assemblyman said. I don't think you're corrupt. I don't think you're racist. I value you. I will have your back. I'll be a mayor to work with you. That's how you're going to get the police to apply for the jobs. And then we have to work on the relationship between the community and the police. The police can't police the community. They have to police with the community.
You're up next, Mr. Sliwa.
This is amazing. I'm standing here with my two adversaries, both of whom have threatened to defund the police. You, Andrew Cuomo, during the summer of 2020, you said, if you don't reform police departments, I'm going to defund you. And you certainly said that, Zohran Mamdani. We need 7,000 police. We only have 32,500. The problem in recruiting police, which neither of you are addressing, is that their insurance was stripped from them. The state, you did nothing when you were governor, and here in the city, 2021, the city council and Eric Adams did nothing. They don't have qualified immunity, which you benefited from, Andrew Cuomo, with the 13 lawsuits filed against you for sexual harassment. Tom DiNapoli says we're paying out $60 million. Why? Because you had your qualified immunity as governor, and yet people have stood by as police have lost their insurance that all civil servants have. That's why you can't get recruits in, because they're not insured. I will return their qualified immunity because they need to be protected like other civil servants.
First of all, I didn't know that New York City police officers didn't have qualified immunity. I presumed that all law enforcement agencies have qualified immunity. Second of all, I didn't know that mayors have qualified immunity. That's actually kind of crazy. That would mean that mayors would be able to just do whatever they want. It's very different, I think, in a national stage where you're president, because you've got a mandate from the maybe not the majority of the country, but the majority of the country's electoral college votes to be the president of the United States. I think it's a little bit different when you're at the local level, because local level makes sense to have more checks and balances to it makes more sense for it to be more accessible to hold those people accountable when you're at the lowest levels. So him having qualified immunity as a mayor is actually kind of crazy. I didn't know that that's quite how that works. For the insurance thing, insurance is a really big thing that Democrats support. So I would be surprised to see both. I would be surprised if Cuomo and Mamdani both here said, you know what, we shouldn't give law enforcement officers insurance.
That is not New York State. It's New York City on the qualified insurance, on qualified immunity. It's not insurance at all.
You are entitled to free legal counsel, which is what he's referring to.
Yes.
You have spent.
Yes, but it's New York City that has revoked qualified immunity. It's not insurance. It's qualified immunity. It has nothing to do with insurance.
Okay.
So that protected you in all these lawsuits.
And yes, the lawsuits, because there was a report filed. I said it was political. It turned out to be political, and that's why
all 13 women were lying. Come on, Andrew. All 13 women were lying.
After 5 years.
A state trooper too?
Yeah, after 5 years, 5 DAs, 5 years of litigation, I was dropped from the case.
Okay, and also Donald Trump was accused of assault by probably 2 or 3 times that many people. The amount of times that you're accused doesn't make those claims true or not. You can decide whether or not it makes those claims seem more credible to you or not, but it doesn't on its face mean that they're true just because it was 13 women. So bad tack on that part, Sliwa.
Mr. Mamdani, how will you make?
Once in a while.
Okay, Mr. Mamdani, how will you make the city safer, and how will you change the NYPD?
Thank you. This is the concern for so many New Yorkers, and I'm proud to have a comprehensive plan to bring new ideas to this city. If you want more of the same, vote for Andrew Cuomo. If you want an actual approach to lower crime, look at our Department of Community Safety. That is something that has been hailed by experts as addressing so many of the pieces of why New Yorkers are not feeling safe today. We will ensure that no longer are police officers asked to do the job of both policing and responding to the mental health crisis. We will have dedicated teams of mental health outreach workers in the top 100 subway stations with the highest levels of the mental health crisis and homelessness. We will ensure that cops can finally go back to the response times they used to have in 2020, closer to 11 minutes, as opposed to the closer to 16 minutes today, because they won't be asked to respond to the 200,000 mental health calls that are coming in through 911 every year. This is evidence-based. It's been successful elsewhere in the country. It's time we deliver it right here in New York City. It's time for a change.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
I think the problem is if someone is having a mental health crisis, they might be violent to attack a mental health professional who isn't really armed with much more than a clipboard. I think that you probably do want mental health professionals doing ride-alongs with law enforcement officers. I think maybe having them in the vehicle kind of telling the officers through like a earpiece or whatever what to say to calm the person down might be helpful, or to have the law enforcement officer accompany them to make sure that the person is being safe as they're interacting with the person who's having a mental health crisis. That might be something that is good as well. But I don't think that means that you should just have these basically low-key therapists answering 911 calls. Someone having a mental health crisis doesn't care whether or not you have more than a clipboard or not. If they might be violent, right? There are people who have violent mental health episodes. So there are cases where someone with a mental health episodes might still need response from law enforcement officers. At the same time, I think mental health care professionals are probably better at de-escalation and conflict resolution than law enforcement officers. So it's not an either or. You can have both law enforcement officers and mental health care professionals respond to all calls, and I think that it would be beneficial to everyone. But of course, in order to do that, you've got to be willing to hire the amount of people it takes to do that. I don't really think that these Democrats are genuinely interested in increasing the workforce of the New York City Police Department.
Mamdani, we already had it. It was called the Homeless Outreach Unit.
I'm sorry, this is not free for all. We have another question for Mr. Mamdani.
Bill de Blasio funded them by $1 billion out of the budget.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mamdani, we're going to talk about disciplining police officers. The civilian watchdog that...
Normally, I'd be mad about someone shouting over moderators like that, but they're barely letting Sliwa speak. They're barely giving him airtime. So I'm glad that he did have a moment to make that point.
Investigates police misconduct, regularly recommends discipline for cops accused of wrongdoing, but the police commissioner often overrides them. You want to change that policy so that the board has final say. Please explain to viewers in 30 seconds why you believe the police commissioner should no longer have that final say.
What I've said is that I think it's time to remove much of the politics out of the question of accountability. We have the Civilian Complaint Review Board, which, as you said, studies, assesses, and investigates into complaints of abuse and the violation of the law. And oftentimes those recommendations are then subject to political pressures and not followed through on. I think New Yorkers deserve a system where they know it won't then be assessed once again that there's actually more to the recommendation in the investigation that's being done by the CCRB.
Okay, we're wrapping up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani. Mr. Cuomo, do you believe changes are needed for how officers are disciplined? And are there any powers that you would give up as mayor? You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I would not remove the police commissioner from the CCRB. I'd leave it with the police commissioner. I think Commissioner Tisch is doing a very good job. I would trust her. The difference between me and the assemblyman is he doesn't like the police. That's why he won't hire more police when everyone else says we need more police. He wants to use social workers on domestic violence calls, which are very dangerous. And he's told you what he thinks. He thinks the police are racist, wicked, corrupt, and a threat to public safety.
Thank you.
Those are his words.
Very quick.
Mr. Mamdani.
Okay, but Mr. Cuomo, how many police officers do you want to hire exactly? The only person I heard who actually seemed serious about hiring more police officers is Curtis Sliwa.
I'm done. Very quick.
Look, Andrew Cuomo is a politician of the past, and all he can speak about are the tweets of the past in 2020. Those are tweets which I have apologized for to New Yorkers and police officers directly, and they are not what I am actually running on.
No,
but you're incapable of actually speaking about the platform that we have here,
Mamdani,
which is one that will keep New Yorkers safe.
Can we just quickly ask you, because I think what some people feel they haven't heard from you, we hear you saying that you don't believe that anymore and you've apologized. People have not heard you sort of describe the evolution of your thought, how you got from there to here.
You know, growing up in this city, I would think often about safety and justice and the ways in which that relationship has been irrevocably harmed. When I learned about the exonerated five, when I learned about Sean Bell, when I learned about Eric Garner, when I learned about Michael Brown, and then in 2020, when I wrote these tweets, learning about the death of George Floyd. And that was a moment where it felt as if the distance between these two ideals had never been further. And in becoming an assembly member and serving and representing more than 100,000 people in Queens, learning that to deliver justice means to also deliver safety. And that means leading a city where you recognize the bravery of the men and women who joined the NYPD and put their lives on the line. Yeah. It means representing the Muslims who were illegally surveilled in my district and the black and brown New Yorkers who've been victims of police brutality.
So Mr. Sliwa, you've been out there, you've been on the trains, and I would like to know if you believe changes are needed of how officers are disciplined.
Let me just suggest, Zohran, what you've suggested.
Zohran, Curtis.
Zohran.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Appreciate
Let me just suggest that what you have proposed with this new police outreach unit will endanger women and children in domestic violence situations. I know I've been involved in so many of them with the Guardian Angels. They will be killed. They will be maimed. Number two, in dealing with emotionally disturbed persons that I have dealt with for all my years as the Guardian Angels, you need trained professional police officers. Yes, you can have mental health workers with them.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa.
But that has been suggested. It was done before by the Homeless Outreach Unit, and the guy you thought was the best mayor, Bill de Blasio, disbanded
Mr. Sliwa, thank you. Brief response?
To be very clear, the Department of Community Safety is not about responding to calls of domestic violence. We are speaking about mental health crisis and the homelessness crisis. These are the focuses of the work that they will do.
All right. We have other questions for that a little later in the debate, but we want to just change the pace a little bit, candidates, switching gears to the high cost of living in New York City.
Oh, boy. Zohran Mamdani's probably licking his chops right now. He's like, oh, this is my bread and butter.
To kick us off, we have a few quick pocketbook questions that New Yorkers wrestle with daily. So we want to know how much you spend a week on groceries. We'll begin with you, Mr. Cuomo.
Depends how many times
I think all these people are probably so rich that they don't even know. Even Mamdani, I think at this point probably is not really keeping a pocketbook of how much he spends on groceries.
daughters come over, but probably about $150.
Okay, Mr. Sliwa?
Oh, I'd say about $175 with a gallon of milk, now $5 and always rising up. Loaf of bread, simple loaf of bread that used to be 99 cents. It's like $3 now.
Thank you,
the price is too,
Mr. Sliwa,
it's
thank
too
you.
costly.
It's a brief answer. Thank you. Mr. Mamdani.
Yeah, I actually agree with Curtis on that. It is too costly. Now that eggs are down to less than $4, though, my average spend every week is about $125, $150.
All right. Do you carry credit card debt or do you pay?
Interesting. It's very interesting. I think he's the only politician that I've heard over the past few months to even mention that egg prices went back down. Seems like everyone forgot about that story.
Pay it off every month. Mr. Mamdani?
I pay it off every month.
Mr. Cuomo?
Pay it off.
Mr. Sliwa?
I don't have a credit card. I have a debit card.
And for the record,
I love that.
What is your monthly rent or mortgage, Mr. Sliwa?
About $3,900. It's not subsidized there, so.
Mr. Mamdani, what is your monthly rent or mortgage?
$2,300.
Mr. Cuomo?
He has a rent-stabilized apartment that a poor person's supposed to have. Mine is about $7,800.
Okay.
Yo, if that's true, bro, if that's true, that's actually a really good slam dunk in a segment that really should be Mamdani's home turf. So, I mean, well done. If that's true, you're not lying, well done. That's a really good attack there.
We are actually getting to
We're gonna cover that subject. Sally?
Thank you. We're going to talk a little bit more about the runaway rent in this city. Mr. Mamdani, you're pledging to freeze rent for nearly 1 million rent-stabilized apartments. That really affects less than half of all rentals in the city. What is your plan for those who aren't in stabilized apartments but are struggling to pay the rent? What are you going to do for them?
Well, I'm proud to say that yes, will freeze the rent for more than 2 million rent-stabilized tenants, and I will also build 200,000 truly affordable homes across the 5 boroughs over the next 10 years to ensure that tenants, whether rent stabilized or market rate, can actually have more housing such that they are not being priced out of this city. And finally, I'm also going to make it easier for the private sector to build housing in this city, because what we see today is that it's not labor, it's not materials, it's the weight that is often costing so much to actually build the housing we need in this city.
Thank you.
The weight? I was surprised you didn't mention anything about zoning.
And a follow-up for you, Mr. Mamdani. The cost of maintaining a building change year to year for landlords. The Rent Guidelines Board is legally required to consider those costs when deciding whether to freeze rents. So how can you promise a rent freeze today before ever seeing that data next year?
You know, we've seen the data time and again. It's
next year's data.
It's been data that's been overruled by mayors again and again. The last rent
You can't overrule data from next year if it hasn't come in yet.
Guidelines Board study showed that profits were up 12% for landlords of those units. And what did they do? They raised the rent, adding to more than 12% under Eric Adams' administration. What I am speaking about is actually reflecting the needs of these New Yorkers and the state of the market today. These are New Yorkers.
Huh? Wait, let me rewind. Hold on.
That profits were up 12% for landlords of those units. And what did they do? They raised the rent, adding to more than 12% under Eric Adams' administration.
Okay, I understand.
What I'm speaking about is actually reflecting the needs of these New Yorkers and the state of the market today. These are New Yorkers who have a median household income of $60,000. We do not need to be pushing them further out of the city. We need to keep them in their homes.
Aren't you saying in that answer that you are going to prejudge You will not have seen the data for next year, and you're making a determination based on data you haven't seen.
I've seen the data year after year of the fact that salaries are stagnating,
Based
costs
on the
are up, New Yorkers can't actually afford their apartments. And I will also take action to actually ensure that the landlords of those buildings can better handle their costs by taking on their insurance, their property taxes, and their water bills.
And you haven't seen next year's data
Mr.
yet, but
Cuomo,
we're going to go
I do
to
have a question for you on this subject. You have proposed something that you're calling Zohran's Law. You think that Mr. Mamdani earns too much to live in his rent-stabilized apartment, though I should note that there are no income tests for rent-stabilized apartments. But critics say your plan would force people to...
Reason did a really good video about this. I believe I shared it in my Discord server. She's 100% correct here that it's not based on income. So like I understand where Cuomo is coming from, because the pitch for this policy was essentially, hey, people who are poor will be able to afford housing. However, the way the program actually works, it's sort of random. It's literally a lottery. So it's not just for people who are poor. It's just sort of random, which, like, I don't know who came up with that idea. It's a pretty dumb idea. But she does make a good point where when he said, oh, a poor person is supposed to have that, not necessarily.
To pay too much of their income towards the rent. So if you think Mr. Mamdani is gaming the system, what about the other New Yorkers, thousands of them just like him, who earn similar salaries, who are living in similar apartments?
Okay, just to follow up on what Sally was saying, because she's right. This is not a new plan that the Assemblyman is talking about. It's Bill de Blasio's plan. It was called Freeze the Rent. Bill de Blasio says the mayor can't say legally he's going to freeze the rent. There's a rent guidelines board. There are certain considerations that have to be looked at. You're right, Sally. You can't say today what it's going to be in 4 years. Also, freeze the rent only postpones the rent, because then you have to have an increase to cover the costs. Otherwise, the building is going to go bankrupt. And it does nothing for the majority of renters who aren't in these rent-stabilized units. Does nothing for NYCHA. Does nothing for homeowners. Does nothing for people in black-brown communities who are getting priced out. I was the HUD secretary. I built affordable housing all across this nation. I built affordable housing in this city when I was in my 20s. I know how to get it done. I will get it done. On the rent-stabilized units, what I'm saying is those are the precious units, and we should keep them for the most rent burden.
We have to move on.
But I have a question.
Yeah, anyways, I'll
for you.
No, sorry, he invoked me for much of that question. Just a very brief response here.
She's going to let him respond because he's not Curtis Sliwa.
You know, you've heard it from Andrew Cuomo that the #1 crisis in this city, the housing crisis, the answer is to evict my wife and I. He thinks you address this crisis by unleashing my landlord's ability to raise my rent. If you think that the problem in this city is that my rent is too low, vote for him. If you know the problem in this city is that your rent is too high, vote for me.
If I understand it correctly,
sons of millionaires need subsidized housing.
Would not evict Mr. Mamdani.
It would not evict it.
It would apply to people applying for apartments. But the tenant advocates.
It would evict no one.
This
would be an income limitation on the rappers.
I have a question for Mrs.
This is like a spat in the schoolyard. Let me suggest.
Mrs. Sliwa, Rosarena has a specific question for you on this.
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about affordability and obviously address that issue.
Yeah.
So you've proposed, Mr. Sliwa, plans that would make a point of talking about the struggle of renters and property owners. Describe your plan to help renters and landlords.
Well, first off, we have 6,000 available apartments that the mayor controls in NYCHA, and they've been empty for years. That you address #1. Then we talk about senior citizens who are living here. My whole goal is to improve and not to move. I'm concerned about the seniors, especially those that own homes. If they're 65 and make less than $250,000, no property tax, because the property tax is way too high. We need to cut it in half to keep people who are here. And then in terms of rentals, we have affordable housing that can be built in these huge skyscrapers. You see them all throughout Manhattan and in northern Brooklyn and in Long Island City, which we have 25 Empire State buildings full of commercial space that will never be occupied for office space. We should be...
This can't be done. I mean, not affordably. You would need to spend a lot of city resources. Now, I know it's late, but this is actually something that's rather important. I think it was it Wired, urban planner answered this question. Yeah, I think you answered very briefly. It's why I feel comfortable playing this. But let's see, which one was this? This is one of my favorite urban design questions, actually, that I've seen, because I've studied somewhat urban design when figuring out how best to build a Minecraft village of all things in an SMP that I'm running with my brother called Bro SMP, which I also stream. But yeah, he answers this question in about a minute. What Sliwa was proposing here could not be done without massive city subsidies.
Not sure why they aren't turning the current empty office blocks into small apartments. Don't we need housing more than offices? Indeed we do. And it's totally doable, except that we stand in our own way. We've created an incredible framework of rules that a building has a specific use and only one use. What are some of these rules that stand in the way? There's light and air is the first one. If you're an apartment, you need to be able to open the window. And for some reason, somebody in the 60s or 70s came up with this idea that if you're an office, you don't need to open a window. Now, that's not the way it is in Germany, but in America, it's that way. So you've got all these hermetically sealed buildings. And now we got to get past that. Open the window. And then people say, well, you're going to be too far away from a window if you fill an office building with apartments. You don't have to have the apartment go all the way back to the elevator. What if it stops 30 feet back, which is the current rule for how far away you can be from an opening window? And after that, why not make some space where we can perhaps have some vertical farming? Sure, you can put storage or villa storage, but why not grow some vegetables?
Okay. So the whole green thing, it's kind of, I don't think he has the right priorities in order. But, so one of two things would have to happen. Either one, you sort of break up all these windows or whatever so that these buildings are retrofitted to fit the requirements for apartments, which is extremely expensive. I think it's the most likely thing to do, but very expensive. It's not something a Republican would be willing to fund. Or B, you would need to change the rules so that apartments don't need, sunlight, windows that you can open, which, if you tell the citizens of your city, hey, your new apartments aren't going to have doors you can open and you're not going to have sunlight, I don't think that's a very pleasant pitch. So kind of stuck between the rock and a hard place, especially as a Republican, when it comes to converting office buildings to apartments. So what he's saying here would never happen.
Converting them,
they would never convert
we have
that.
all throughout Manhattan, and it can be built here. Property tax is way too high. We need to cut it in half to keep people who are here. And then in terms of rentals, we have affordable housing that can be built in these huge skyscrapers. You see them all throughout Manhattan and in northern Brooklyn and in Long Island City, which we have 25 Empire State Buildings full of commercial space that will never be occupied for office space. We should be converting them into affordable apartments. They're in dense areas. The infrastructure can support it. I'm the only candidate here who's against the city of Yes that would destroy residential neighborhoods.
I have to interrupt you because we have a programming moment right now. We're about halfway through the mayoral debate. Channel 4 and Telemundo 47 will return to regular programming, but we got a lot to get to, and you can continue watching live on NBC New York and Telemundo 47 streaming and digital platforms, Telexitos, Politico.com, and YouTube. Stay with us. A lot to discuss.
I'm noticing there's no audience, which kind of makes sense. This is a local race. But with a debate with this production value, I would have expected some sort of audience.
Gentlemen, thank you. That was kind of a natural point for us to transition, and we want to talk now about transportation and getting around town. And we have a few quick questions about how you get around town. Show of hands, even though they're in their waning days, who has a Metro card or maybe uses OmniPay?
Uses OmniPay?
Yeah, OmniPay, yeah. Metro card, I mean, I have one, but, I know I'm hanging on to the last moment.
So you're on the subways, Mr. Sliwa. What do you use? I'm just curious. If you don't
OmniCard. In fact, I got a whole batch.
Okay.
I'm in the subways, I'm in the buses, and the express buses. The only candidate who rides mass transit every day.
When you need to get somewhere fast and you can't take the train, do you hail a taxi? Do you use rideshare? Mr. Sliwa, what do you do?
I try to avoid yellow cabs. As you know, I was shot in the back of a yellow cab in 1992 by the Gaudis and and Gambino's. But I find my way around. If I have to, I Uber if I can't get there by mass transit.
What do you do, Mr. Mamdani, if you can't take the train?
I would either take a cab or ride a bike.
Mr. Cuomo?
I would take a cab.
I could see him in a bike with a little helmet.
Uber.
Okay. All right. Thanks, gentlemen. Sally?
Thank you, David. Let's talk about free buses. Mr. Mamdani, this is a centerpiece of your campaign. Can you explain how you will make buses free? You have 30 seconds to answer.
Absolutely. We will make buses free by replacing the revenue that the MTA currently gets from buses. This is revenue that's around $700 million or so. That's less money than Andrew Cuomo gave to Elon Musk in $959 million in tax credits when he was the governor. And the reason that we will do so is that making buses free doesn't just provide economic relief, but also public safety, because what we've seen is that it decreases assaults on bus drivers by 38.9%. New Yorkers deserve more than the slowest buses in the country. I know that because I was on the M57 not too long ago, and its average speed is 4.9 miles an hour.
We're at time, though, but the question is how you...
Wait. The idea or the fact that people are assaulting bus drivers because they don't like the cost of riding the bus or that the bus is driving too slow, which is hilarious to me. It's just like, and the fact that it's scientifically proven is even funnier. I don't know. It just seems like look, I've been in bad traffic, so I understand the 5 miles per hour thing, but it's like, bro, I think you're the problem if you're assaulting a bus driver because you don't like the cost of the bus fare. Like, what? That's crazy.
We will fund the revenue that would have otherwise been brought in from fares, and that's something that we would do in partnership with Albany, and I've put forward 2 proposals. The first is to raise taxes on the top 1% of New Yorkers by 2%. That would raise $4 billion.
I'm a flat tax homie, but sure. Raise the taxes if it means free buses. I don't think it. I've spoken about this in the previous video. I don't need to say it again, but yeah, I think it's worth it to raise taxes in order to have free buses.
The second is to raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey, which would raise $5 billion.
We're going to move along, but I just want to point out to viewers that Governor Hochul has opposed raising the income tax. But Melissa, we'll move on to your question.
Okay, could I address that on the buses? Because half the people don't pay their bus fare to begin with, Zohran. And so it's
Zohran.
It's a complete disaster. If you have free bus fare, and the Citizens Budget Commission said just last year, 2024, $1 billion of fare evasion in all different forms, this MTA system will collapse. There's not enough money out there to make up for fare evasion. Pay your fare. If you don't pay your fare, they have fare programs for the poor and the indigent. But everybody should be forced to pay their fare.
If you raise the taxes, the finances can be found.
Cuomo, you had both praise and some criticism for Mr. Mamdani's free bus pilots. You're sort of in the middle on this issue. What's your plan to make subways and buses more affordable?
I think free buses is a mistake. It costs about $700 million. Just to give you an idea that we only raise about $500 from congestion pricing. It's been done before in other cities. It was a disaster. They stopped. They basically became mobile homeless gathering places. What I say is free buses for working families who can't afford it and free subways for working families. But don't subsidize rich people on a bus, and it's been tried and it's failed.
Mr. Mamdani, can you just respond quickly on the point about the mobile homeless gathering places?
You know, this is something that we heard when we were fighting to make buses free in Albany when we delivered the first fare-free bus lines in New York City history. And what we saw is when we made one bus route free in each borough of New York City, there was no increase in homelessness on those buses. There was no increase in fare evasion in the surrounding area. What there was an increase in ridership of up to 38%.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
Well, candidates, maybe we can dig deeper on this and get a sense of how all of you would pay for your big ideas. Mr. Mamdani, we'll start with you. We've obviously been talking about free buses. You've talked about free childcare, city-run grocery stores. So essentially, you're proposing about $10 billion in new spending. And as you've indicated, you want to pay for it with tax increases. But as Sally pointed out, Governor Hochul said no to raising income tax on millionaires. So tell New Yorkers tonight how you're going to pay for all of this in 1 minute if you can.
Look, a lot of people have called even my campaign a non-starter when we first began. And now I stand before you proud to be the Democratic nominee who got the most votes in city primary history. And I believe we will see the same thing with our push to ensure that we are taxing the wealthiest and the most profitable corporations the fair amount that they should pay. Now, there are those who will say that because it will be hard, you should give up. We saw what giving up looked like when Andrew Cuomo was the governor. He gave up on fighting for working-class New Yorkers and instead caved in to his billionaire donors. And what did we get? We have the fastest and most frequent helicopter service to the Hamptons, and we have the slowest and more expensive bus service across the 5 boroughs.
But again, Mr.
So, does he think that he can just like kidnap all the rich people and force them not to leave? We already have people leaving New York for places like New Jersey. You could have people leave just New York City, actually. They can stay in New York and then they don't have to pay that the increasing taxes on the rich. This idea that like you can just tax the rich and just take their money in a place where you're not holding them captive, and that would be a successful long-term plan, is childish, I think, to be charitable.
Mamdani, I know Governor Hochul indicated this week there may be some open windows, but more or less income tax on millionaires is off the table, according to the governor.
Look, I've said very clearly, making buses fast and free costs.
If you're a city, can't you have city tax? I don't know how the taxes work as far as jurisdiction is concerned, but I mean, can't you have city taxes, citywide taxes?
It's about $700 million a year. Making universal child care a reality costs about $5 or $6 billion a year. If you raise the state's top corporate tax rate to match that of New Jersey, you'd be raising $5 billion in and of itself.
I have a couple of follow-ups. Sliwa, you're next, but I have a couple of follow-ups.
I would just want to add one additional thing.
We have also let him list an additional thing because he's not Curtis Sliwa.
Forward a plan to save money here in New York City with $1 billion in savings through procurement reform, through following the independent budget office's assessment about hiring more fiscal auditors, and in actually collecting the fines and fees from bad landlords across the city.
Just a quick couple of follow-ups. If you could find some of the funding, but not all of it, which of your priorities would come first? What would be the first among equals that you would try to get done?
Well, freezing the rent doesn't require any fiscal infusion, so that will be something we'll be pursuing immediately. And universal child care, after housing, is the second cost. Child care is the second cost pushing New Yorkers out of this city. $22,500 a year is the estimate we've seen. That will be a priority for us.
And I just want to know if you could get the money and funding elsewhere, would you drop the call for the tax increase?
Absolutely. The most important thing is funding these agenda items. I think these are the two most important and straightforward, direct ways to do so. But if the money comes from elsewhere, the most important thing is funding.
Melissa has a question for Mr. Sliwa.
Mr. Sliwa, you've been talking about cutting taxes and spending. So what is your plan, and how would you pay for your programs like 7,000 more cops?
Well, Zohran, boy, your fantasies are never going to come about in terms of funding everything you want that's going to be free, free, free. It's a fantasy. Let's deal with the reality. 7,000 cops. You already have a plan in Boston where you pay for taxes in the future. This is a great plan in which universities and others who have bought up properties that are now taken from the real estate market and taken from property tax pay. We could raise $1 billion from Columbia University, NYU, that are in the real estate business, and Madison Square Garden, your friends, Andrew Cuomo, Jimmy Dolan, who pays no property taxes. That's how you raise $1 billion to get 700 police officers trained, vetted, and out into the streets in the 5 boroughs. And then the police will be on the subways, and they will be patrolling the old-fashioned way where they're needed, going up and down the moving subway cars where people want to see the visual protection, especially women who are being assaulted, perved, and like we saw this morning on 86th Street, a woman with a gun to her head, an armed robbery because we don't have enough cops.
I have a question for you.
You know what's crazy? I think a lot of it is just because of how dense New York City is. I think even a safe city would probably have some crime. But like the fact that crime is so bad in New York City that he can just say, oh yeah, this morning some woman had a gun to her head. Like, New York City has some problems, especially with violent crime. And very clearly, of course, Cuomo and Mamdani don't really care about addressing that. It's just kind of wild how bad things are in New York City. Of course, it's not all places, not all the time. I went to Times Square on a work day and had no issues, but you know, there is there's some crime in a lot of places in New York City. So
in this topic, and let's talk about history, because as governor you raised and cut taxes. Now you're proposing some tax relief. What's the price tag for your proposals, and where will you get the money for example, 5,000 new police officers? You have a minute to answer.
I think Sally's question was very well taken. The Assemblyman's whole plan is based on a myth. He's going to raise taxes. Albany's going to raise taxes statewide on corporations, but the money's only going to go to New York City. That could never happen. It's not just that the governor wouldn't support it. It's impossible. He said he's going to raise the taxes the same as New Jersey, corporate tax. No, it would be double the tax. You would see New Yorkers on 995 fleeing to Florida. We would be alone. So you have to be realistic with revenue. You have a $115 billion budget. You have to go through that city budget and find savings. I started the state, which is double the budget of the city, it had a $10 billion deficit. I closed it and added services. And we can do the same with New York City.
Governor, as mayor, you would not increase spending in the New York City budget, yes or no?
There would be, whatever additional spending would be revenue neutral.
So
it's impossible. You got to cut taxes for people to stay here.
Thank you.
Corporations are not going to stay here. They're being lured south to cities that are more corporate friendly. You got to cut the property tax, income tax for those who are 19 to 28 who have skill levels if they go to school here.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa.
Andrew Cuomo thinks it's all right to spend $60 million.
Yo, wait. So he doesn't let Sliwa speak to interrupt, but he lets Zohran Mamdani interrupt on the same question. That's crazy.
South, the cities that are more corporate friendly. You got to cut the property tax, income tax for those who are 19 to 28 who have skill levels if they go to school here.
Thank you, Mr. Sliwa.
Andrew Cuomo thinks it's all right to spend $60.
This is some of the most blatant bias I've seen in a debate in a while. Now, I will say it's been a while since I've seen some debates, but like, this is some very obvious bias here.
$1 million to fund his legal defense from accusations of more than a dozen women of sexual harassment. But if I say we should spend the same amount of money on delivering cheaper groceries in this city through a pilot program, that is unfathomable.
Quick, David, I have a right to respond to that.
Yes, quickly.
First, I did not bring those lawsuits. That was brought by the Attorney General, which I said was political.
Well, those
That's what generated
by individual
the legal fees.
women, and some of them have still been making their way through the courts this year and
yes,
now.
And I've been dropped from the cases.
Not all of them.
Yeah. And what the Assemblyman doesn't say is all this money that he wants to pass, the one thing he did do is he voted for a pay raise for himself. They're the highest paid legislators in the United States.
I did ask the State Controller's Office this week. I did ask the State Controller's Office this week. The total was above $60 million. But just those sexual harassment cases to defend Governor Cuomo and his staff was about $21
Sorry, it was the sexual harassment and
I just want to clarify because you said 60, but on those cases it was 21.
Okay. Thank you. We have to talk about quality of life in the city. Let's turn to everyday life in the city and some issues a mayor can directly impact. We start with a couple of questions about 311, the number New Yorkers call or text for non-emergency help. First off, have you ever called 311, and if so, for what? Mr. Mamdani?
I called 311 for issues with my heating in my apartment, and I've spoken to New Yorkers time and time again who are frustrated by the fact that they can track their Uber Eats block by block, but when they call 311 for them to come to their apartment, it's just a question of hoping and praying that they do. There's no actual appointment. That's something that we would change.
All right, Mr. Sliwa, have you ever called 311?
You know, there used to be that song 911 is a joke by Public Enemy. 311 is a joke. You can call it over and over and over again, and you never get a response.
Have you?
The analytics are when the operators talk to you, as I talk to them.
Have you called?
Yes, I've called them many times and gotten no response.
Mr. Cuomo?
Most citizens I talk to on the subways and streets never get good responses from 311.
Short answer. Mr. Cuomo?
I've heard a lot of complaints about 311, so I actually made a call to 311 myself to see if the complaints were bona fide. And I was dropped twice. Then they were going to send someone to help a homeless woman in distress.
All right.
And no one showed up.
You're all expressing frustration. Last year, 311 received 38 million contacts from New Yorkers, from calls to the website. Wanted to know if you had a sense across the 5 boroughs what the top 2 categories of complaints were. What do you think they were, Mr. Sliwa?
Potholes, constantly potholes. People's undercarriages ripped out, ball bearings, alignments.
Second one, top 2?
Rats.
Rats, okay.
Oh, the city is flooded with rats.
Mr. Cuomo, what do you think the top 2 complaints were?
Homeless and trash rats.
All right, Mr. Mamdani?
There was housing and noise.
Okay, so the answer is noise and illegal parking. And we're going to stick with quality of life. Rosarina?
That's
Surprised
right. Let's
that
talk about
illegal
noise
parking is so high.
candidates because they fall into these 2 categories. First of all is the residential one, that's the neighbors and the loud music. And the second one is the street or sidewalk, everything with the loud construction and workers outside. So, Mr. Cuomo, as mayor, what can you do to help the city that never sleeps get a little bit of rest, Mr. Cuomo?
Yeah, look, I think if the 311 system worked well, if there was actually contact with people, I think New Yorkers would get it. I think New Yorkers would be responsive. I think we have to change the ethos in this city, the ethic in this city. Right now it's toxic, it's divisive, everyone's angry at everyone. I think when we have public safety that's functional again, and New Yorkers are part of that system, I think they would be more cooperative than you think.
Thank you very much.
There's no proposal.
Mr. Sliwa,
That's a really good point. That was actually my first thought.
quiet a little bit the city that never sleeps?
In the outer boroughs, I see problems all the time, quality of life issues. 18-wheel tractor trailers, RVs parked everywhere. Garbage that's not picked up and collected. In the city, we've seen trash cans taken away by the sanitation department, Jessica Tisch, when she was the commissioner. The quality of life has diminished noticeably. So naturally, people are going to revert to 311. But it's important that a mayor be able to provide services to all the people. And they believe if quality of life is diminished, the next stop is sell your house and leave the city. And my goal is to improve and not move.
Mr. Mamdani, your turn.
What we've seen is one of the biggest sources of noise in this city is from congestion. And with the implementation of congestion pricing, we've actually seen noise complaints drop in the congestion zone. And so I would continue to find ways to ensure that we have reduced congestion across the city. And one of the ways is by making the slowest buses in America ones that are fast and free, so that New Yorkers can not only live a life of excellent quality of life, but also be able to get around this city without having to worry if they have $2.90 or soon to be $3 in their pocket, which is already out of reach for 1 in 5 New Yorkers.
So I think, as I understand, from what I could tell from being in New York now, city, having visited, now to be fair, when it was a day trip I spent most of it, the vast majority of it, in Times Square, but also not just that, but also just looking at videos. And, I've seen like Fashion Week vlogs taking their videos of people talking about life in New York City. The one thing I find interesting is it seems like there are way more people in New York City than there is space for their vehicles. I have considered other trips to New York City beyond just seeing Times Square. And it's like the place, it's impossible to park. There's not much room for the vehicles in comparison to the people who live in New York City. So much so that there are a whole lot of people in New York City who actually don't own vehicles because there's no place to put their car. There's no place to drive the car. If you were going to fix the congestion issue, I think that the solution would have to be you've got to tear down some buildings and you've got to build more roads. Tear down the buildings, you got fewer people in the area. Maybe if it's a residential place, you've got fewer people living there. Okay, that will reduce congestion. Then you've got more lanes that you can build, more roads, right? That also would reduce congestion. I think one of the biggest problems with New York City is that they are trying to put so many people there. And also, the infrastructure there is not the best, right? When we're talking about particularly, like, you've got rats running everywhere, you've got law enforcement agencies that are relatively defanged and are inefficient or ineffective at best. You've got to focus on maintaining a high quality of life for the people who live there. Congestion is something that I don't even think that many elected officials in New York City are considering. I think, props to Mamdani here for actually just like suggesting a potential solution to this issue. But I really don't think that congestion pricing is going to have a net benefit of the cost of living. Because look, this is the guy who has purported to be the one who wants to actually increase quality of life. Well, and also make it more affordable to live in New York City. Well, if you tell New Yorkers, hey, to drive, you're going to have to spend more money, that's not really going to be appealing, especially if someone in New York City already uses a car. Here's another thing. If literally everyone gets rid of their vehicles, I don't know that would really get rid of congestion unless people decide to stop using Ubers and stop using cabs and start using trains and buses. And then you might have so many people, especially when it comes to the buses, that you would have to add more bus lanes and things, and easily you get the same amount of congestion that you have there. I think this is really just a density problem unless you're building more roads or building bridges or underground tunnels for vehicles. I just don't know that congestion is something that you could fix. Now, maybe one thing that you could do is you could incentivize people to get electric vehicles, right? I've heard game systems louder than a Tesla, so that's something that could help reduce noise, right? But but then again, of course, I don't even know what the situation is when it comes to the infrastructure for electric charging stations in New York City. Noise, I think, is one of those things that I don't think it should be the primary focus of a New York City mayor, to be honest. Many of the solutions for the noise would cause other issues when it comes to quality of life. So to me, I just don't think that's something that they should be focusing on primarily.
We have here the author of Congestion Pricing, and we have the apprentice of Congestion Pricing.
Okay. We might
I'm
need
the only candidate who's opposed to congestion pricing.
Thank you.
It has led to storefronts closing because they don't have enough food.
We need to move on, otherwise we might have to place a call to 311 about candidates going over their allotted time. Okay? So we're going to move on to
don't worry.
We're going to move on to illegal parking plaques in many neighborhoods. Recently, Councilmember Lincoln Ressler released a study that found 450 vehicles parked illegally during the day in downtown Brooklyn, many with fake or government placards. That's just one snapshot of the city, but you hear similar complaints everywhere. So how would you fix this specific situation? You'll have 30 seconds. Mr. Sliwa will begin with you. Well,
obviously.
Well, one thing that you could do, I think, if you've got so many government vehicles doing illegal parking, double whatever fines would be accrued from that illegal parking. First of all, it's a bigger punishment, right? Because you're a government official, so of course the punishment should be bigger and more dramatic. You should not be illegally parking. Second of all, you would probably use that money to fund some of your initiatives, such as hiring more police officers. So.
Placards have been abused consistently. You have people who've created fake placards. Not only that, you have people with fake license plates, paper plates. There's all violations against the Department of Transportation rules and regulations of where you can park a vehicle. There's just no enforcement. And that's because we don't have police. We have these e-bikes going up and down. We have the motorbikes. They're not following rules and regulations. They should be licensed. They should have a way of being identified. This way, enforcement can take place because people are terrified walking out into the streets.
Mr. Mamdani, your plan for illegal parking?
We have to showcase that accountability is true, whether for New Yorkers who are just living in this city or those who are working for this city. And the violation of traffic laws are violations no matter who is doing it, and to show that accountability is something my city government's actually going to pursue.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo.
On the quality of life, you're right, is very, very important. On the placards, I would make it simple. I would recall all the city placards and reissue only those that are bona fide, period, on day one. On the quality of life issues, the worst thing that could happen is if the Assemblyman's proposal for legalizing prostitution went through. That would be terrible for the quality of life. He also doesn't want to enforce misdemeanors.
We're getting to that,
That's
Mr.
assault, larceny, etc. That would be terrible.
We're going to have time to address that.
Doesn't want to enforce misdemeanors. That's crazy. Also, the whole like legalizing prostitution thing. I'm very surprised that that's something that Mamdani wants to support.
I want to be very clear. Not only have I never called for the legalization of prostitution, I'm not calling for that today either, and I also have never said anything.
I mean, he's not saying that it should stay illegal though.
About not enforcing.
Remember, he said today. He's not calling for it to be legalized today.
Misdemeanors. This is just yet another figment of Andrew Cuomo's imagination.
The DSA, which you give your part of your salary to, that's their position: abolish jails, no new carceral facilities, don't enforce misdemeanors, and you're on the bill in Albany as a sponsor to decriminalize prostitution.
The difference between myself and Andrew Cuomo, of which there are many, is that there is no one that is actually telling me what to do other than the 8.5 million people who call this city home. If you want my policies, you'll find them on my website.
Who told you to legalize prostitution?
Okay, we actually have a question.
No one is saying that anyone told him to legalize prostitution. He is the whole crux of this claim. I'm surprised that Cuomo's botching this. Mamdani is giving money to to an activist group that is saying legalize prostitution, right? And I think that's true. Mamdani certainly is not saying otherwise, which obviously in Dunk, if you're not doing it, just say you're not doing it. It doesn't matter whether or not he's being paid to do that or someone is telling him to do that. He's doing it. That's the main complaint. The main complaint isn't that someone is telling him to do that. So kind of a weird pivot there. And it's a shame that he kind of broke Cuomo's ankles there rhetorically.
You can't escape this. You signed the law doing away with loitering for prostitution. That was the law put forward by Jessica Ramos.
Gentlemen,
you started the prostitution in East Elmhurst, and Jackson Heights and Flushing.
Mr. Sliwa, we have...
And you want to add to it, which diminishes the quality of life.
Mr. Sliwa, when I talk over you, nobody's hearing you, and we actually have a question on that. So we'll let Rosarina ask.
And for this question, candidates, we want to come to Queens, where we know that prostitution has been an ongoing complaint. Mayor Adams formed a task force and ordered sweeps by the NYPD, but the situation continues, especially around the very popular Roosevelt Avenue. As mayor, Mr. Mamdani, how would you handle this situation? You have 30 seconds.
I want to first be clear that I am not, and nor have I ever called for the legalization of prostitution. And if you are happy with what's happening on Roosevelt Avenue, then you should vote for Andrew Cuomo, because his policy is to continue the exact same ones we've seen under Eric Adams. My policy is to actually take on sex trafficking, to have a zero tolerance for violence against women, and to follow the advice of district attorneys that we have here in New York City, the current Manhattan DA, the former Manhattan DA, the current Brooklyn DA, the former Manhattan DA having said that prosecuting women for prostitution is something that actually leads to less safety. And what we need to do is provide an economy
Mr.
of
Mamdani,
opportunity.
just a quick
So it sounds there like he actually is saying that he supports legalizing prostitution. It's like, hey, the only way to get rid of prostitution is legalize it. Like, bruh, that's crazy. And legalize it and increase quality of life. Still not a particularly enticing or logical argument.
Clarification. So no legalization. How about decriminalization?
I do not think that we should be prosecuting women who are struggling, who are currently being thrown in jail, and then being offered job opportunities. I think we should be actually providing those kinds of opportunities at the first point of interaction.
Mr. Cuomo, your turn.
Oh my neck, I've been here for 3.5 hours.
Bill de Blasio, the Assemblyman is a mini-me BDB, okay? He's Bill de Blasio light. He proposed legalizing prostitution. He didn't get it, and he just told the cops, don't arrest any more prostitutes. There is a bill in Albany that he signed that says the prostitution that a woman who is a prostitute, that would be decriminalized. That is what the bill says. And that's what he said, if you listen very carefully. That would take Roosevelt Avenue and explode it, because it would make it legal for prostitutes.
But real quick, how would you handle this situation?
You have to enforce the law. It's illegal. I went to Roosevelt Avenue. I talked to the store owners. I talked to the neighbors. I walked down Roosevelt Avenue with prostitutes there at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Your turn, Mr. Sliwa.
I've dealt with this back in the 80s and 90s in Hell's Kitchen in Chelsea, when they were overrun with open-air prostitution and Times Square. You don't go after the women. The women are the victims here. You lock up the Johns, you shame the Johns. You let everybody know about the Johns. The madams and the pimps need to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And these absentee landlords who knowingly rent their rooms, their apartments out for the use of prostitution, the Department of Building should come in, padlock the building, seize the building. Because many of these landlords live in Delray, Florida. They did back in the 80s and 90s when we did it in Chelsea and Times Square and Hell's Kitchen. And they're doing it again, and there's no enforcement. That's why the prostitution.
We're going to go to Sally now.
Thank you, David.
Blatantly common sense answer.
We're going to talk a bit about experience and beliefs. We've covered a lot of ground tonight, but we want to probe a bit deeper into each of your mindsets and how you'll approach governing as mayor. Mr. Cuomo, you have touted your experience on the campaign trail time and again, but you pretty squarely lost the Democratic primary to Mr. Mamdani, forcing you, a lifelong Democrat, to run as an independent. When you announced that decision, you said, quote, "When you get knocked down, learn the lesson and pick yourself back up." What lesson did you learn, and what do you feel it said about you, something you did wrong, something that you need to change about yourself?
Yeah, I think in the primary campaign, I did not do enough on social media, which is a very effective medium now. I think the Assemblyman did do a better job on TikTok and social media than I did during the campaign, and that has changed now. I've also increased my activity significantly, but my agenda is exactly the same. I am the Democrat, although I'm not on the Democratic line. He is a Democratic socialist, called Barack Obama evil and a liar. Didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Fight and deliver is, I will fight for people, I will fight the bureaucracy, and I will deliver results. New Yorkers need the mayor to get something done. This is all words and theories. I am a manager who can actually get things done.
This is a question about self-reflection. Is the thing you're reflecting on the most that you need to be on social media more? Was there any other deeper lesson that you learned?
Between the two campaigns, social media, more accessibility.
Okay.
I just have to say, it's been an hour and 20 minutes of this debate, and we haven't heard Governor Cuomo say the word affordability. That's why he lost the primary. That's why he'll lose the general election. And you can lie all you want, but the truth is, I voted for Kamala Harris. I'm the only candidate on this stage to have the endorsement of Kamala Harris, and I'm not the one who's funded by Bill Ackman, who called Kamala Harris unqualified to be the vice president of this country.
He's actually right. You know, I think that failing to address affordability issues, or even saying you're going to address affordability issues, is probably one of the biggest reasons why he's fallen behind Zohran Mamdani. Affordability, I think, is probably the most important thing for key demo Americans. If you're ignoring that, those Americans feel like you're ignoring them.
Okay, may I respond?
Yes, brief
look,
response, please.
There are a lot of New Yorkers who support me. And there are a lot of Jewish New Yorkers who support me because they think you're anti-Semitic. So it's not about Trump or Republican. It's about you.
Do you think he's anti-Semitic, Mr. Cuomo?
I don't make those judgments about people. Are you a racist? Are you an anti-Semite? I know there are many Jewish people who believe he is anti-Semitic. I believe not condemning the globalized Intifada, what he has said about Hamas.
But Mr.
I can
Cuomo,
see where they are inflamed.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I covered your speech in an Upper West Side synagogue where you said anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. There is no difference. And you were talking about Mr. Mamdani. Is that not an allegation?
No, I make that same statement all the time. I wasn't referring to Mamdani.
Okay, all right. Mr. Mamdani, a brief response, and then we have to move on.
I have denounced Hamas again and again, and it will never be enough for Andrew Cuomo, because what he is willing to say, even though not on this stage, is to call me, the first Muslim on the precipice of leading this city, a terrorist sympathizer, is to say...
He should probably list all the times, the dozens and trillions of times that he has denounced Hamas. Because, you know, they asked him to denounce Hamas in this debate, and I don't think that he did. I think the thing he said is they should stop shooting Jews. And that's like the bare minimum. Like, when it comes to this subject, he should speak as little as possible, because I feel like he puts his foot in his mouth every time he speaks. Because the only people he's winning with any of the things that he says on this issue are progressives. And progressives are not the majority of Americans at all.
Call me, the first Muslim on the precipice of leading this city, a terrorist sympathizer, is to send mailers that artificially lengthen my beard, to say to New Yorkers that they should be fearful. What I will do is deliver for all.
Melissa has a specific question
for you. You are the Democratic nominee, and you're also a member, as we've been discussing, of a political organization that may be less familiar to New Yorkers, the Democratic Socialists of America, which believes in dismantling capitalism. New York City is the global headquarters of the finance industry. So how would you be the mayor of Wall Street and the DSA? You have 1 minute.
I would be the mayor of this entire city. And that means ensuring that the wealth that we generate in this city is also wealth that every single New Yorker can actually feel in their pockets. Because what we have today is a system that has generated the most wealth in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, where 1 in 4 of our neighbors are living in poverty. That's unacceptable. We can't look at 500,000 kids hungry every single night as just the cost of doing business in this city. That's something we have to actually change. And I'm going to do that by fighting for my neighbors in Queens that I've come to know, who are not only the ones who own teapots and toy stores, who own diners and dry cleaners, but also the ones who work there. Because right now, all of them are being pushed out of this city by corporate greed, by private equity, and by a politics that refuses to fight for them. I will finally deliver that.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Mamdani. A lot of Hispanic that flee socialism and are a little bit scared to hear your policies. What would you tell them?
Well, I would first say that I wouldn't be here without the support of Latino New Yorkers, because it was the majority of their support that helped to make me the Democratic nominee. And what democratic socialism means is a belief in the dignity of each and every New Yorker and the responsibility city government has to deliver that dignity. That's why I'm speaking about childcare, because it's pricing out New Yorkers from the city. That's why I'm speaking about freezing the rent, because housing isn't a human right in the way that we practice our politics in this city. And that's why I'm talking about making buses fast and free, because 1 in 5 New Yorkers are being priced out of public transit today.
It sounds like he hasn't sort of consulted anyone who's actually fled socialism, because he's saying like, yeah, I want these socialist policies because they might benefit Americans. He's not explaining how the socialist policies that he supports would be any better than the socialist policies in the places that these Hispanic Americans have fled. And he also failed to explain how in the world he's going to syncretize his socialist views with the capitalism of New York City, which was the actual question. I was surprised that the follow-up wasn't pressing him on that, where it's like, well, how are you going to tell Wall Street and bankers and people who have headquarters in New York City that this is going to be a good place for you to hang your hat when you're going to have congestion pricing? Many rich people, they have their own, private drivers and whatnot, for security reasons, of course. If you're going to be increasing taxes on the very rich, right? And having these socialist policies such as freezing rents, which historically have not worked. These are all questions that Mamdani should be pressed to answer, but I don't think that he has any ample response to any of those concerns.
Rosarina.
So, Mr. Sliwa, I would like to talk to you because you were here with us 4 years ago in the same stage for the general election debate, and you lost it. Why do you believe New York is ready to elect a Republican this time around?
First off, did I not warn you 4 years ago that Eric Adams would be corrupt and we would have chaos? Did I not? Of course I did. And I get praised for that. Now I'm trying to get people to vote for me, not just on the Republican line, but also my wife, Nancy, who is the best thing that has ever happened to me, created the first ever independent Protect Animals line, which calls for no-kill shelters and putting animal abusers in jail. But the other thing that differentiates me from both of my adversaries is that I am opposed to the city of yes, which will destroy the residential neighborhoods. Both of them are for the city of yes. So when you vote for me, whether on the Republican line or the Protect Animals line, turn your ballot over and vote no on all those initiative and referendums. Imagine, they've said, how can you, Curtis, a Republican, work with a Democratic majority in the council? Adrian Adams is in agreement with me. The Democratic city council people are in agreement with me. No to the city of yes, which will take your homes and provide you instead with lithium-ion battery warehouses next to your house, which are like mini Chernobyls. I'm the only candidate who is opposed to the city of yes.
I love that turn of phrase. He's kind of right. You got like one small spark and that whole thing is blowing up. Like, I think I'm good.
I have a quick follow to that, Mr. Sliwa. How do you bring down costs if you don't build more housing?
Oh, it's very simple to build housing. You just look in New York City. We have so many dense areas.
Oh yeah, New York City has a whole lot of room for new houses. Can't you see? It might be one of the worst responses he's ever given in this debate.
You just look in New York City. We have so many dense areas where you no longer can use the commercial space. They used to be office space, and you just convert it into residential housing. You don't need to go into the outer boroughs.
How? I showed you the video. Either you have to raise, what is it? You have to raise a lot of government funds to subsidize the conversion of those buildings into residential housing, or you have to change the zoning so that residential housing doesn't have to have sunlight, doesn't have to have open windows. If you do that, people are going to complain about those things. Believe me, they will complain about those things when they move into those apartments. Now, are people so starved for housing that they're willing to just take it? I don't know. I don't think that when people dream of living in New York City at this point, they're looking for stuffy rooms, rooms with stuffy air and no sunlight. I don't think that's what people are looking for. Maybe people are desperate. I don't know. But I just think that, especially from the Republican side, I could not see him doing what is needed to actually get this done. Even if you use eminent domain to seize the housing, which is the quickest and most efficient way to get this done, which I think would be an abuse of power. Even then it would cost a lot of money to convert that housing. So I'm just not seeing the vision, man. I sympathize with you, right? Those buildings should not be empty, but at the same time, I don't think that you can force the owners of that building and that land to convert it into residential housing. And I don't think there are enough incentives that you could offer that would convince them to change the configuration of that building, because it'd be very expensive for them to convert it into residential housing.
You don't need to use wetlands or parklands, which they seek to do. If you build a new building, it takes 5 years. If you convert an
All right, Mr. Sliwa, thank you. We want to change the pace here a little bit.
In a year.
No one's primarily concerned about the time it would cost to convert the buildings. It's about the money. It's not going to happen under Curtis Sliwa. I'm sorry. I'm a Republican. I'm center right, closer to him politically than anyone else on the stage. But this is one thing that he just needs to let go of, because it's not going to work.
I want to change the pace and just get a sense of what you think about political leadership. We're curious about who you admire. Who is the best modern-day U.S. president? Mr. Cuomo?
Modern day? Well, I'm
Obama,
partial.
right?
I was Bill Clinton's Housing and Urban Development Secretary. We built affordable housing all across the United States.
So Bill Clinton?
Empowerment zones. I would say Bill Clinton.
Okay. Mr. Mamdani?
I would say FDR.
Mr. Sliwa?
Modern day.
Modern.
I think when he says modern day, I think he means when they had color photography. Okay. Oh.
I would say Bill Clinton.
Okay, Mr. Mamdani?
I would say FDR.
Mr. Sliwa?
Is modern day?
Modern.
Well, man, I'd say FDR also, but if that.
He was president 80 years ago.
I would say
Bill Clinton.
Okay, Mr. Mamdani?
I would say FDR.
Mr. Sliwa?
Is modern day?
Modern.
Well,
Man,
I'd say FDR also, but if that's modern day.
Mr. Sliwa?
a man that ended up being loved by Democrats and Republicans alike, the greatest governor we've ever had in my lifetime, George Pataki. 3 terms, no chaos, no corruption.
I was asking.
And he actually beat
President.
the greatest a man that ended up being loved by Democrats.
Is modern day?
Modern.
Well,
Man,
I'd say FDR also, but if that's modern day.
Mr. Sliwa?
a man that ended up being loved by Democrats and Republicans alike, the greatest governor we've ever had in my lifetime, George Pataki.
So he ran for president. But he never was a president. Of all of the questions that you could fumble, why are 2 of the 3 candidates on this stage miserably failing at answering the question of who their favorite modern president was? At least Cuomo gave a reasonable answer, which, I mean, in the era of release the Epstein files, Clinton is a wild choice. I would have gone with Obama. I think it's a safe answer. But like, you've got Mamdani saying that the best modern president was someone who was elected 90 years ago. You've got Curtis Sliwa saying the best modern president was someone who dropped out of the GOP presidential nomination process in 2015. What?
Republicans alike, the greatest governor we've ever had in my lifetime, George Pataki. 3 terms, no chaos, no corruption.
I was asking.
And he actually beat
President,
this
governor and this
modern day
president,
U.S. president.
who's the
Who you thought the best modern
best president in our lifetime?
Yeah.
I would say the best president in our lifetime that I've experienced, I would go back to Ronald Reagan.
Wrong way. Okay. How about the best New York City mayor, Mr. Sliwa? Best New York City mayor, Mr. Sliwa.
Rudy Giuliani, who endorsed me last week.
Okay.
And I'd have a little bit of Michael Bloomberg thrown in because he liked
Mr.
to delegate
Mamdani?
responsibility.
I think the best New York City mayor of all time is Fiorello LaGuardia.
Mr. Cuomo.
It was Bill de Blasio last debate.
No, I've always said Fiorello is the best mayor of all time.
Who's yours, Mr. Cuomo?
Is it of all time or modern time?
Best New York City mayor in Europe.
Of all time, it is Fiorello LaGuardia.
We agree.
Recently, I would say Mayor Dinkins and Mayor Bloomberg.
Okay. How about the political leader, dead or alive, you most admire? Mr. Mamdani?
I would say I admire Bernie Sanders.
Mr. Cuomo?
My father.
Mr. Sliwa?
I said it already, George Pataki, who is loved by Democrats and Republicans and the greatest mayor in our lifetime.
All right.
The greatest governor in our
I just
lifetime.
have one more before Sally starts to ask you about schools. A show of hands. Who supports Kathy Hochul for re-election?
It's a decision that should be made after this general election.
So no decision. Mr. Cuomo, you handpicked her as your lieutenant governor. No thought?
You have to know who's running.
Yeah. Okay. So.
And I would add that I do think that Kathy Hochul, our governor, has been doing a good job in not only
Do you support her for re-election?
not only delivering for New Yorkers, but also standing up to Donald Trump.
Just what? Do you support her for re-election?
Then endorse her.
I'm focusing on November.
Why don't you endorse
and I
her?
appreciate her support
All right,
and I
thanks,
appreciate her
candidates.
work.
But you
Thanks,
don't
candidates.
endorse her.
How about a shout out
All
for
right,
Lisa
we're gonna
Stefanik
turn
to
to-
take out Kathy Hochul?
No.
So you have a
Okay.
Republican
All right.
Mayor Curtis,
All right.
a Republican Governor
Thank you, gentlemen.
Stefanik,
Thank you.
like Giuliani
We want to
and
talk about
Pataki, who
schools.
saved this city.
We want to
and
talk about
state.
schools. Sally?
Okay, thank you, David. Let's turn to education. There are a number of issues facing public schools. One that's been controversial in the campaign is the Gifted and Talented program, which offers accelerated instruction to elementary school children. Mr. Mamdani, you have said that you want to phase out the Gifted and Talented program, while Mr. Cuomo and Mr. Sliwa want to expand it. Mr. Sliwa, we will start with you. What is your plan for the program? You have 1 minute.
Gifted and talented.
Why'd they
Sliwa, we
start
will
by
start
showing
with you.
Zohran
Mr.
Mamdani's face?
Cuomo-
They just assumed that every question was, well, okay, honestly, that's a fair assumption. Never mind.
Mr. Mamdani, you have said that you want to phase out the Gifted and
Wait,
Talented program.
why'd they say, Mamdani, you said you want to do this, and then why are they tossing the question to Sliwa now? That's weird.
While Mr. Cuomo and Mr. Sliwa want to expand it. Mr. Sliwa, we will start with you. What is your plan for the program? You have 1 minute.
Horribly written question.
Gifted and talented.
Yes, Gifted and Talented.
I have 2 younger sons with Melinda Katz, the Queens DA. They both attempted to get into Gifted and Talented as 4-year-olds. They failed. It did not present a problem with their future education. We don't have enough slots. Right now, they're 1,900. We need to have at least 5,000 slots around the city. What they have not done at the Department of Education is make these tests available in Black and Hispanic communities. So, for instance, you have 77,000 children who are 4 years old. Only 10,000 have taken the test. Only 2,000 are accepted. Why not offer the test to all 77,000? And even if a gifted and talented class only has 3 or 4 in a minority school, give these children an opportunity to excel too. That would make it fair for everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Cuomo, how does your plan differ from Mr. Sliwa's? You also have 1 minute.
First, I support mayoral control. I think it would be a terrible mistake to roll back mayoral control. That's probably been the most dramatic educational reform in 40 years. We'd go back to the old system that had local school boards, which were corrupt, patronage mills, et cetera. So who runs the system is number one. I would expand the gifted and talented programs, accessibility. I'd offer preparatory courses to any student parent that wanted to take them. I double the number of specialized high schools from 9 to 18, and I would keep the SHSAT as it is.
Thank you. And Mr.
Can I add one thing? There's been no discussion about vocational high schools,
Okay,
which save so many young men and women.
Sorry,
We need to expand vocational training for those who are not going to
we're going to keep
achieve
going here with
academic
Mr.
excellence.
Mamdani. Why should the Gifted and Talented program be phased out, in your opinion? You have a minute to answer.
So I want to be very clear. I have spoken solely of Gifted and Talented for kindergartners. I do not believe that kindergartners should be subject to a singular assessment. I have not spoken of any Gifted and Talented programs older than for kindergarten. I'm solely speaking about kindergarten. And I believe that we should be delivering the best education across the country here in this city. We will do that by following through on the proposals I've put forward to hire 1,000 more teachers every single year through our Community to Classroom program, one that will ensure that we're providing each student, whether they be in high school or someone who is an adult looking to become a teacher, with $12,000 in tuition subsidies so that they can start to fulfill the the 7,000 to 9,000 additional teachers we need so that we can actually deliver on the Class Size Reduction Act, which I was proud to pass in Albany, that will ensure that children and teachers actually have a manageable ratio in that classroom so that they can learn. Because today, that learning is being rendered impossible by the number of kids in that same classroom. It's time to make sure that that number is lower.
Nah, just get rid of the phones.
You don't believe the mayor should run the system?
I've been critical of mayoral control because of the ways in which it's been used to take away the voice of parents, of educators, of students. And I think it's important that those same voices be a part of how we lead the system.
So are you...
You know, I agree with this guy on this as well. I was actually telling my liberal friend this. I say my liberal friend as if it's like a job position. I've you know, working for me, I have my liberal friend. No, I said Craig of Craig Kim fame. I'm a huge supporter of parental rights, and I am. I think it's really cool that Zohran Mamdani here also is a fan of parental rights insofar as public school education. That's encouraging to see.
For or against mayoral control?
I've been critical of it. I'm against mayoral control, and I think that there's an importance of developing something that actually enshrines all of those voices together.
Mr. Cuomo, you also tried to curtail it when Mayor de Blasio was mayor. But
I'm sorry.
Did you hear what she said?
No.
I was saying you proposed a curtailment of mayoral control when Mayor de Blasio was mayor during
There's been multiple modifications of mayoral control.
But some proposed curtailment at your hand. So if you are such a champion of it tonight,
no, I never proposed reversing mayoral control.
No, shortening the duration of time he would have control of schools.
Yes, for renewal. The renewal period.
How much control of schools, Mr. Mamdani, how much control of schools would you be giving up? Is it just a sharing arrangement? I know you want to share with the districts and with parents, or would you be giving up full control? And is that an accountability problem if the buck doesn't stop with you?
I think the mayor needs to retain the accountability so that New Yorkers know exactly who they can come to when they have critiques. And I think we also have to develop a system where we don't have what we saw just recently, where you have hours and hours of parents and teachers and students testifying only to be overruled without any consideration by the panel on
Thank you. Mr. Mamdani, I have to move on. Switching now, it's a question for all three of you, switching to students with learning challenges. Parents of students with dyslexia, ADHD, and autism are very well aware of the fact that the school system in New York City is not doing enough to meet their children's educational needs. How will you help these parents and students? We know that Mayor Adams has expanded evaluations specifically for children with dyslexia. It was an issue close to his heart, but what would you do more broadly, Mr. Mamdani?
You know, I think some of the initiatives that Mayor Adams has launched, especially with this chancellor, have been showing positive signs, especially for literacy and for preparedness, especially as we're in a national crisis on reading and mathematical comprehension. And I think those are programs.
I didn't know the literacy was up in New York City.
That should be furthered, should be invested in, all while also ensuring that we're giving teachers greater flexibility in the curriculum that they're actually teaching. Because what I've heard from many of those teachers is that too often the curriculum that's being procured in the $10 billion a year in DOE contracts is one that has little relation to the classroom.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani. Mr. Sliwa, you have 30 seconds.
Yes. We have $41,000 that we're spending on each student now. By fourth grade, 2/3 of these children cannot read, write, or do math at grade level. We should be ashamed of ourselves for that. 100,000 less students than we had last year. 1/3 are truants. We have 200 schools with 200 students or less, and Michael Mulgrew determines which schools stay open. Eric Adams is not exhibiting mayoral control. The mayor should run the Board of Education, the old Board of Education that is now the Department of Education. The bureaucracy. You have 13 deputy chancellors. You have 50 department heads that suck up all the money. And teachers are still reaching into their pockets to pay for badly needed supplies for the children in the class. The money should be going to the teachers and the children and young adults, and it's not.
Mr. Cuomo, what is your specific plan to deal with the challenges of students who have learning differences?
We are losing young families. When the child becomes of school age, they leave the city, they go to the suburbs, they go to New Jersey. They're not going to sacrifice their child on what they think is a secondary education system. The core competency reading and math, below 50% is a disgrace. The Gifted and Talented programs gives people hope. I do believe Mayor Adams has made progress on the evaluations and services for children who require special needs and assistance, but obviously we have to do more.
So we have another question about improving schools. And in the last year, the schools enrolled more than 36,000 migrant students, many learning English for the first time. From class size to bilingual teachers, that puts a big strain in the system. Mr. Cuomo, what can you do to help migrant students, but also the staff? You have 30 seconds.
Well, first, I think it was wrong of the state to put so many migrants in New York City. New York City had the overwhelming majority of migrants.
But they're already here.
Close to about 80%. The state should have put them all across the state, Nassau, Suffolk, upstate, so other governments could have also.
Well, they were bused here from Texas,
And
right?
we have a
Yes,
situation
but if
right
they're
now.
bused from Texas, you could have brought some to Nassau, 20 miles,
Yeah, but they're here right now,
Westchester.
and we're asking
Yes.
about the current problem.
Yes, well, that's how the problem was created.
Okay, we understand
The
that.
state put them here, the state gave the city the
understand
bill. It has now increased the challenge in our education system. The state is going to have to help financially.
So you didn't answer the question, Mr. Mamdani, is your chance.
You know, when I spoke about our community to classroom program, the importance of it is not just bringing in 1,000 more teachers every year, it's also that we would bring in a number of more bilingual educators. Because what we've heard from a number of adults who have taught in other countries, now live in New York City, is the process by which they get their certification approved to teach here is one that is onerous and one that is actually pricing many of them out. That's why this is a program that will directly address that, to increase that bilingual capacity in our school system so that we can teach every single child, no matter when they got here,
But
the public education
Mr.
they
Mamdani,
deserve.
this certification has been offered and it hasn't been successful. So how can you make more teachers to be, like they want to do this?
Part of what I've heard is that the tuition costs as part of the same certification exams are onerous for many of these adults looking to switch careers. That's why this program is built upon providing $12,000 in tuition assistance that would lead to 1,000 more teachers every year.
And also salaries will be a good.
We have not just migrant children, we have the children of the homeless, over 120,000. We haven't yet discussed charter schools, parochial schools that are closing. Normally, parochial schools would have been able to take some of these children. We need to expand the number of charter schools that are doing an amazing job, especially in the inner cities. And why not make that available to migrant children and to the homeless children who are coming from shelters all across the city who need the special teaching skills that have lifted children in the charter schools? We need to give choice because that's our most precious resource, our children.
So allow me to now move on into the
I
sanctuary.
agree on the charter schools.
Thank you, Mr. Cuomo. So allow me now to enter into the sanctuary city situation, and let's talk about also undocumented immigrants. 26 Federal Plaza has become a flagship in federal immigration crackdown. We reported that asylum seekers are showing up for like those routine appointments, not facing any criminal challenges, and they end up being deported. So by the show of hands, we would like to know if you believe that any of you could do something to stop this. Okay. So, Mr. Cuomo, you have a minute to explain us what would you do?
The law is the law, and I would have an attorney assigned to every person who is undergoing any review by the federal government or any legal proceeding.
I don't believe that. If the federal government can't do that, and believe me, it's not a matter of not being willing to do that. It's a matter of not being able to do that. The federal government can't do that. Why on earth would we think that the New York City government would be able to do that?
And put the full weight.
And by the way, New York City can't even get half the amount of cops that they need, by the way. So they can't get the cops they need. Federal government can't get the amount of lawyers that they need, but New York City can. I think that, unfortunately, it's too much to expect them to be able to pull this off.
Weight of the city government behind it and make sure they are legally protected.
Mr. Sliwa, what's your plan?
Look, Going after the criminals, that's the job of Immigration and Naturalization Service, ICE. But when they have to perform under a quota, because I speak to many of the men and women who serve this country, it's putting too much pressure to go outside of courthouses, to go Home Depot shape-ups, or the backs of restaurants and hospitality businesses, which have hired these migrants, and they are essential workers now. I can tell you, I have 3 sons. None of them are going to do that work. Some Americans will, but most won't. We need to protect the migrants who are workers, who are essential workers, and use ICE to go after the drug dealers, the gangbangers, the sexual predators, and those who are sex trafficking and involved in narco-terrorism.
Mr. Mamdani.
So if Donald Trump wants to enforce immigration law against illegal immigrants who are not committing any other crimes, this is the group of illegal immigrants that Curtis Lee was speaking of. I think a great follow-up question would be, would you be willing to step in and oppose ICE in their efforts to enforce immigration law? Because I think that's the natural conclusion of what he's saying, unless he's saying what Trump should do, not what he is willing to allow in the state of New York City.
Mamdani.
Now, I'd be proud to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations. And it's at 26 Federal Plaza that I've seen what used to be moments when New Yorkers would be getting their citizenship turn into moments of tragedy, where judges are asking New Yorkers who are there for a routine immigration check-in whether they're prepared to leave in the very same clothes that they arrived to that courthouse. I agree that we need more legal representation. I also think we need to actually be able to stand up to Donald Trump, because I heard from Pastor in East Flatbush, Pastor Galbraith, who told me how he accompanied a member of his congregation to 26 Federal Plaza. He sat there as a judge was determining her fate. They managed to convince the judge to replace the deportation order with a TPS order, but they knew that ICE would not care about that change, and they had to sprint her out of the building, smuggling her into the elevator in order to get her back to Brooklyn.
Thank you.
Candidates want to talk about New York City's economy and change the pace a little bit. Everyone supports growing New York City's economy. The mayor is our chief salesman to the business world. So we want to mix it up, test your persuasive power. So we're calling it an elevator pitch. And we'll start with you, Mr. Mamdani. In this scenario, imagine you're talking to the CEO of a big tech company deciding to move its headquarters to New York City or to Dallas. The CEO is concerned New York just raised its corporate taxes and employees will pay more for everything. Look into the camera and make your pitch to that CEO to come here and not there.
This is a question that should have been asked earlier when they were talking about capitalism versus socialism.
And do it in 30 seconds.
New York City has something that Dallas or no other city across this country could actually offer, and that is the quality of life. That is the arts and the culture. That is the people that make the city so special. And I, as the mayor of this city, will deliver that quality of life, will deliver the safety that is the cornerstone of an affordability agenda, and will ensure that
I'm not sure if I'm interpreting this correctly, but I'll say this. I didn't know that the safety in Dallas and New York was so comparable. It's nearly identical. What the heck? Look at that. Crime in that's crazy. So Dallas is about as dangerous as New York. I had no idea. I had no idea. I mean, because I was expecting, because he was like, oh, you know, Dallas can't provide the amount of safety that New York City has. I was fully expecting New York City to have a lot more dangerous crime statistics than Dallas. I was not expecting them to be exactly the same.
companies choose to come to this city and also choose to stay in this city, because so much of what drives the tech sector is a hunger for innovation, a unrepenting desire to actually innovate, and those are the very things that are going to characterize my city government in this.
But what do you say to the CEO about the corporate taxes and also the staggering costs for the workers?
We are going to make this city more affordable so that workers who want to work at those companies can actually be able to do so. And we're going to ensure that this city continues to be one where we see businesses opening and also staying open.
All right, thank you.
The problem is that I think this pitch is great for LinkedIn users. I'm talking about people who don't have jobs. Indeed.com users, perhaps. But I think the problem with that pitch is that it doesn't work for the CEO. What he's saying is the cost of living for the employees is going to be higher. I don't know how that helps the CEOs, unless we're seeing a bunch of people quitting their jobs because life in New York City isn't affordable, which seems backwards to me. You would think they'd be picking up side hustles. I don't think this pitch would connect with CEOs at all.
Sally?
Mr. Cuomo, something of a reverse scenario for you. The CEO of a similar company with 1,000 good jobs tells you she's very close to moving her headquarters out of New York City. She cites everything from taxes to the crushing cost of living for her employees in New York City. How do you convince that CEO to stay? Please look into the camera and make your elevator pitch. You have 30 seconds.
We know that the other companies in New York City. I'm sorry.
The question is to me in this camera?
Yes, the question is how you would convince the CEO of a company with 1,000 good jobs who's looking to move out of New York City because of the high cost of living for her employees and taxes, how you would convince her to stay in New York City.
In 15 seconds?
30.
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. I get it. I understand your frustration. I understand that the far left has been raising taxes and making businesses feel like the enemy. We get it. That's gone. The DSA, the socialist orientation, we're not socialists. It didn't work in Venezuela, didn't work in Cuba, didn't work here. We know that we have to work with business. We want to be your partner. We want to have taxes that help us grow our city, but are competitive for you.
We're at time.
And we want to partner to grow your business and our city together.
Thank you. Mr. Sliwa, let's talk about business, because let's assume the big tech company that we pitched to Mr. Mamdani earlier has decided to move to New York, and it's 1,000 good paying jobs, and the CEO wants to be based in Astoria, Queens. But there's a loud pushback of residents who don't want the noise and the traffic. How can you convince the residents to accept the new neighbor? You're speaking to a very powerful community. How can you convince them?
But we saw that with Amazon. Amazon wanted to come in, and AOC led the charge, and local elected officials to say no to Amazon. That was a big mistake. I would say this. Our companies are being recruited away by the day. We have young people who are going to school here who could fill their needs in these high-tech industries who also are being lured away. We need to cut their income taxes for 5 years. Tell them if you go to school here, graduate here, no income taxes for 5 years. It's an income tax holiday. And the most important thing, we have to be able to assure the executive that this will be a city where we don't lock up toothpaste any longer, but lock up the criminals who make it intolerable to have a good quality of life.
Thank you.
I don't know. I think that many people in Queens would say, hey, I mean, you could just make New York City free without bringing the company to Queens necessarily. I don't really love any of the answers to this question.
We need to move on to a subject that is
Democratic Socialists of America that stopped Amazon and cost us 25,000 jobs. So
Thank you.
Curtis Sliwa already said that. You don't need to say it again.
Cuomo. We need to move on to a crisis that is very important to a lot of voters, and that is people struggling with mental health problems. Roughly 500 times a day, someone calls 911 about an emotionally disturbed person. And in a limited number of those cases, when the person is not believed to be violent, social workers are dispatched instead of police. Mr. Mamdani, you want to do that on a much larger scale. So we want to know, how will this work? When will you send police versus social workers? You have 1 minute.
You know, we have a program here in New York City called Be Heard that is attempting to do this kind of work. But we've had a mayor who has ensured that it's been unsuccessful, to the extent that even when there was an assessment of about 60% of calls that could have been addressed by Be Heard instead of the NYPD, Be Heard was not actually responsive to it. And that's because we haven't had the political will to deliver on what is a crisis that affects so many New Yorkers, which is the mental health crisis. What my plan will do, an innovative plan of the Department of Community Safety, will take what has worked elsewhere in the country, a program in Eugene, Oregon, where they took 24,000 911 mental health calls out of the police department. They were able to respond to all but 311 without police assistance. When there is a concern for safety or of violence, absolutely, you would have the police there. But what we are doing today is actually ensuring that every single call is going to the police and not allowing them to do the work that they signed up to do.
How will you determine whether there is a concern for safety or violence? What is the line between the calls in which police will be dispatched and the calls to which social workers will be dispatched?
The line is also going to be one focused on violence and the threat of violence. And I also trust the operators who will be receiving those calls to make that determination, as they do every day today for so many emergency services.
And just two really quick points, please. There has been a lot of discussion that you would send social workers to domestic violence calls, which police are concerned about. So you're saying no, okay. And then the other question is, how can you be sure that a situation that does not sound violent when someone calls 911 does not become violent in the moment? Would police be assigned as backup?
I think what you do is you actually follow the experts that have shown us this can work when you're willing to ensure that you're trusting the mental health experts who have been doing this work elsewhere in the country, where they call for the police when they need the police, but their initial impulse when there's no violence in that call is to actually address the mental health at the heart of it.
Okay,
I'm not sure how you know whether or not there's going to be violence there until you get there, you know? I mean, like I said earlier, like I said earlier, mental health crises can get violent.
Mr. Sliwa, you have encountered plenty of these types of situations in your decades of work with the Guardian Angels. So do you see this approach working? You're not a police officer, but you've helped out in situations.
Zohran, boy, another fantasy that's not reality. Eugene, Oregon. Have you ever been to Eugene? I've been to Eugene. Come on, this is New York City. We have so many emotionally disturbed persons that are in need of help. I will tell you this, Andrew, you closed the mental health beds that were taking care of them. 40,000 when you came into office, down to 4,000 because of your cuts, which forced these people to live in the streets, in the parks, and the subways. These people need to be removed. They need mental health care. We need to make our shelters safe. I've been in 1/3 of the 300 shelters run by the Department of Homeless Services. It's Darwinian there, survival of the fittest. If we can make our shelter system safe, we can get men and women who are homeless in there, especially veterans who we're not giving any attention to, who we put out in Ward's Island at 10 o'clock at night, release during the day, don't give any training, have them roam about, and obviously when you have nothing to do, you end up getting into trouble. Okay. This is a disastrous, homeless, and emotionally disturbed plan that we have in New York City. And I'm the mayor that can change it because I deal with them every day in the streets, in the parks, and the subway.
Okay,
he's completely right, but this policy is extremely unpopular. Nobody wants to be building, facilities to house and take care of people with mental health issues for whatever reason. I think that a lot of people are scared of viral stories about mental asylums and how they've abused people with mental disabilities, but they don't have to be that way. We know a lot more about mental health conditions now. You could easily create a system like this that is far more humane. We've got to find a way to break down the stigma of providing proper care to those who have mental health conditions, and then build up the infrastructure so that a lot of people who are on the streets just because they have mental health conditions are no longer there. They have shelter, a much nicer place to live, and they are able to be treated by mental health care professionals.
Mr. Cuomo, do you think that the NYPD handles these calls for emotionally disturbed people in distress well? Is there room for something in the middle?
Yeah, I think the Assemblyman deals in theory. There's an advantage when you actually have experience. I've run homeless programs. I ran the homeless programs for the federal government. I worked with cities all across the nation. When you get a call on a telephone about a mentally ill person who may be violent, it is a very dangerous situation. And I think you should have a mental health worker accompanied with a police officer, because these can be explosive situations. I have been in situations that seemed apparently calm and fine and then erupted into violence very quickly, and it got very dangerous very quickly. So I would have a social worker with a police officer and get the people off the streets. That's the humane thing, and get them the care they need, not institutionalize 40,000 people again. We have supportive housing now, which is what we use, and forensic beds for people who need them.
Now, let me get this straight. A police officer is there first. He has to wait for the arrival of a mental health care worker.
I would send them as a team.
As a team, but that's not realistic. You're dealing with fantasy also.
All right.
The police officers are going to be the first one on the scene, and they're always going to have to deal with it first and foremost.
No. If you hire as many mental health care professionals as you do officers, you would have the same equal amount of them in the squad room, and equal amount of them in the vehicles. I don't see why you couldn't have them both respond at the same time. As long as you just hire the same amount of people and you always have the same amount of people from both sides clocked in, there should be no problem there. I think this is one of the things that Cuomo is most right about, and one of the things that Sliwa is, well, I don't know about Sliwa is most wrong. Cuomo, Mamdani is most wrong, but I really wish, this is the type of thing I feel like a Republican should be able to get right. I'm actually surprised at his take here.
Cuomo says that he has experience running homeless programs. What he has experience doing is cutting funding for the very programs that prevented homelessness here in New York City. As the governor, he cut funding for the Advantage program, which was putting New Yorkers who had otherwise been in shelters, otherwise been homeless, into apartments. I met one of those New Yorkers,
Mr. Cuomo,
and she told me how that pushed her out on the street.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani. Brief response, Mr.
He's talking about a program 14 years ago that was a pilot program that had a work requirement. It was very controversial. It was $65 million.
You're talking about Advantage, just so we know what you're talking about?
Okay. It was 14 years ago, $65 million. I added billions to the homeless budget. Funded the homeless budget larger than any governor in history.
Okay.
Thank you. We want to talk about. He cut that program.
Mamdani,
homelessness skyrocketed.
Mr. Mamdani, we have aired this
14 years ago.
All right.
It was during the Bloomberg administration, and yes, okay.
Okay. I want to ask you about climate change. As New York City confronts the impact of climate change, one issue already on the desk of the next mayor is Local Law 97. It's passed in 2019. The law requires large buildings to gradually reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. That may require very expensive upgrades to buildings, which some landlords and co-op owners say they just simply can't afford. We're wondering how each of you would enforce the law. You have 30 seconds. Mr. Cuomo.
Local Law 97, I support. Implementing the law is going to be the key, because it has to be done in a way that isn't so disruptive to businesses and residences that they just give up and pay the fine and don't even try to comply, which is what is going to happen now. It will be cheaper for them to pay the fine than comply, and that obviously will accomplish nothing. So yes, I support the law. Yes, we have to implement it, but we have to implement it in a way that is feasible.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Cuomo. Mr. Sliwa?
Local 97 will destroy those people who have invested in co-ops and condos. There's 100,000. It's forcing them to electrify. Now, you, Andrew Cuomo, took Indian Point offline, 25% of our electrical capacity with no replacement, which has caused skyrocketing electricity bills. And now we're going to force condo and co-op owners to electrify. Maintenance fees will go up 30%. These people will be leaving their condos and co-ops. They need relief. When I'm mayor, I slow that process down. We need our co-op owners and condo owners to stay here in New York City and not flee.
Indian Point? Yeah. Indian Point was started before me. It was a very dangerous situation. We have nuclear facilities upstate, and my proposal on what I did is run cables from the nuclear facilities upstate to bring the power to downstate. Indian Point had 20 million people in the kill zone.
Thank you, Mr. Cuomo. Mr. Mamdani, local law 97, how would you enforce the law as mayor?
I support the law, and I would also make it easier for condo and co-op owners to comply with the law, because what I've heard from so many is that it's cheaper to pay the fine than to actually get into compliance. And I think the city has a role here in procurement at a large scale of so much of what is necessary in these infrastructure investments. We've seen it be done in the Clean Energy Challenge within NYCHA. It's time to do it right here in New York City to assist those condo and co-op owners in meeting the standards we desperately need to hit.
Okay, gentlemen, New York City loves its parades, and the mayor is often front and center. You have all said that you want to be mayor for all New Yorkers. So will you march in all the parades that mayors have traditionally marched in, or are there any that you would boycott? Mr. Sliwa?
This question went viral. In the words of President Donald Trump, what a stupid question. What a stupid question. I don't know how many parades there are per year in New York City, but I think that you would get no work done if you participated in every parade that occurred in New York City.
I think a mayor has a responsibility, whenever possible, to march in parades, to celebrate whatever that parade is performing as. I've been a Grand Marshal of the Pulaski Day Parade. I was proud to celebrate my Polish heritage.
Are there any that you would boycott, though? I just need to move this along.
Excuse me?
Would you boycott any of the city's parades?
No, I would not boycott any parades.
Mr.
It's the mayor's responsibility to be available to all racial, ethnic, and religious groups.
No, I wouldn't unless they discriminated.
Okay. Mr. Mamdani?
There are many parades that I would not be attending because I'd be focusing on the work of leading this city.
Which parades would you not be going to?
I've already missed a number of those parades because I've been trying to speak to as many New Yorkers as possible.
Okay.
I don't have the list of all the parades I've missed.
Wow, that's a lot. The mayor should be going to all parades.
Let me ask you.
Why is he treating this question so seriously?
This. Are there any parades that don't exist that you think should? Mr. Mamdani?
I haven't thought much about parades, to be honest with you.
Mr. Cuomo?
I have not thought. I don't even know what parade doesn't exist, frankly.
Could be for anything. Mr. Sliwa?
Every parade has the right to exist in New York City. I would ask
David? Thank you.
Mr. Mamdani, would you protect the Christopher Columbus statues that exist here in the city?
I'm telling you, my focus.
That's not a parade. What are you doing?
This is on affordability. I'm not thinking about
Well, you're not answering the question.
Yeah, thank you.
You're not answering the
He
question.
gave the finger to the Columbus Day statue.
That issue's come up.
That's what we
early
call
in the
a
debate. All right,
disgraziado.
Listen, we're in the last couple of minutes, and we thought
know what
we'd
that
have
means?
some questions. We thought we'd have some questions that maybe give a glimpse into your life, your personality, away from the political podium. What's your go-to breakfast order at the bodega? Mr. Sliwa?
Oh, eggs and cheese on a roll. No salt, please.
Mr. Cuomo?
Same thing, no salt also.
Mr. Mamdani?
Egg and cheese on a roll with jalapenos.
No.
Have you ever purchased anything in a cannabis shop? And if so, what did you buy? Mr. Mamdani?
I have. I have purchased marijuana at a legal cannabis shop.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo?
No.
Mr. Sliwa?
When I was shot 5 times, I've had Crohn's disease. I did use medical marijuana. Yes.
Okay. In a dream scenario,
Bro was a gangster. I love that.
no, it's not possible, but the Mets are playing Game 7 of the World Series on the same night as the Knicks are playing Game 7 of the NBA Championship, and you can only go to one. Which one will it be, Mr. Sliwa?
Again, which baseball team?
This is the Mets, Game 7, Knicks, Game 7.
I'm not going to the Mets game. I'm a Yankee fan. True baseball fans either like one or the other. I'm going to the Knicks game. That's my team, the Knicks.
Mr. Cuomo?
I'm going to go half and half. I can make it back and forth.
All right. Mr. Mamdani?
This is what New Yorkers are sick of. Just pick a team.
What's
Come on.
your answer?
I'd be there for the Knicks.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of ground covered. We'll leave it on that light note. Thank you, candidates, for a spirited debate. We thank you as well. We hope you got a lot out of it. New York City viewers, New York City voters. The New York City Campaign Finance Board, we thank heartily, and we urge you to check out their website, nycvotes.org. From all of us here, we certainly thank you for watching. And remember, go vote on Tuesday, November 4th. Have a good night.
Oh, man. If it wasn't so late, I would try and get some analysis, but I gotta say, that debate was quite interesting. I will say, I don't think I've ever seen a debate where I've seen so many people on the stage that had at least one policy I agreed with. I agreed with Cuomo on how to address the whole mental health crisis thing with 311 calls or 911 calls that involved mental health crises. Completely agreed with that. I agree with Mamdani not only on the free buses, but also the removing the mayoral control and delegating more control of local school systems down to the parents who actually are involved in those systems. But in the majority of these questions, of course, I agreed with Curtis Sliwa. I think there were one or two things where I was like, he doesn't really seem to have a full grasp of kind of the situation or what actually might create the effect he's going for, specifically when it comes to the housing thing, right? With converting, like the commercial housing into residential housing. You can't just flip a switch and do that overnight, and it's going to cost too much money for him to find a palatable solution to do it. And if he doesn't spend any money to convert the housing, people are not going to find it appealing, or they're not going to move in. So, in my opinion, unless they're extremely desperate. So, yeah, I think in general, hey, if I had to pick someone, I would pick I'd pick Curtis Sliwa. I would vote for Curtis Sliwa if I lived in New York City. But that said, I genuinely think they all have some good ideas, which is really refreshing to see. Usually you'll see one person with like all the good ideas and the rest of them just kind of like bouncing off the wall, especially in a Democratic sort of led debate. Pretty surprised to see things from Cuomo and Mamdani that I agree with. So that was nice. But there were some crazy things I just didn't expect. The fumbling of the question about greatest living president. That's wild. That was crazy. I gotta stop talking about that before I start laughing again. But hold on. Let me set this up here.